from this morning and also some new friends. We're also delighted to have participants from different part of Indonesia joining us via live stream. Hello from Jakarta. Thank you for joining us here today. And I hope everybody here had a great lunch, great coffee, and come back energized as we are now moving into the first panel discussion of this afternoon. So the first session will discuss on how knowledgeable and experienced human resource can be attracted to, located in, and retained within transmigration areas to foster useful knowledge spillovers supporting the development of integrated transmigration economic areas within the framework of transmigration transformation. Now, this session will be moderated by Dr. Meirina Ayumi Malamasam. Dr. Meirina is a researcher at the Research Center for Population within the National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN. She holds degrees in Regional Development and Population Studies from Universitas Gadjah Mada, as well as Master of Social Research and PhD from the Australian National University. With her deep research expertise at BRIN, Dr. Meirina brings invaluable perspective on population and demographic dynamics to our dialogue. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Meirina Ayumi Malamasam. Dr. Meirina, welcome to the stage. I hand over the session to you.
Which chair? Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished guests, panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the panel 1 of the Transmigration Executive Dialogue, Strategic Lecture, and Policy Forum. As introduced before, my name is Meirina Ayumi, but usually called Ayumi. I'm a senior researcher for Research Center for Population BRIN, who will be your moderator for this panel for the next 90 minutes. Before we proceed to the presentation session, let me provide some brief context for this panel. As we heard before, I think some of you already here since the morning. Indonesia is now entering a new phase of transmigration policy. It is evolving beyond a primary focus on population redistribution. The current transformation focus centers on building KETT, Kawasan Ekonomi Transmigrasi Terintegrasi. This approach creates productive economy hubs outside Java to act as strong pull factors for natural and regulated migration. Today, our panel, the first panel, will specifically examine the central role of human capital in this new era of transmigration. Our discussion will particularly address a central question: how can human capital be attracted, supported, retained, and connected with local communities and economic actors so that knowledge translates into practical capabilities, innovation, and sustainable value creation. The main objective of this panel is to identify the condition under which knowledge become useful knowledge, or knowledge that can improve local capabilities, raise productivities, support innovation, creates opportunities, and strengthen social resilience. For this panel, I would like to invite our 3 expert panelists. I will call you one by one. Please come forward when I call your name. So, our first panelist, please give applause for Profesor Dr. Fazli Jalal, Spesialis Gizi dan Kesehatan, PhD. Professor Fazli Jalal is a leading figure in education, public health, and human capital development in Indonesia. He is now an expert advisor to the Minister of Religious Affairs and has also served as Vice Minister of National Education, Director General of Higher Education, Director General of Teacher Quality Improvement, and Head of National Population and Family Planning Board, or BKKBN. He holds a PhD in public health from Cornell University and is now a professor at Universitas Gunadarma. Next, our second panelist, please give applause for Bapak I Dewa Gede Karma Wisana, PhD. Please come forward. Dr. Dewa Wisana is the Director of Lembaga Demografi, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Indonesia. He earned his PhD in economics from the Australian National University, and he is a senior researcher and lecturer specializing in labor market economics, population mobility, and evaluation research. He has served as lead national consultant for JICA on the implementation of the SDGs and as an expert for the G20 Employment Working Group. And lastly but not the least, I think you already see him since the morning. I would like to invite Professor Sonar Baskaya. Professor Baskaya is Professor of Economics and Head of the Economics Department at the Adam Smith Business School, University of Glasgow. He earned his PhD in Economics from Brown University and previously served as Senior Economist at the Central Bank of Turkey, Fellow at the London School of Economics, and Visiting Professor at Dartmouth College. His expertise spans macroeconomic, economic growth, social economics, and labor mobility. So, let's move to the presentation. For the presentation, we will begin with Prof. Fasli Jalal, followed by Dr. Dewa Wisana and Prof. Baskaya. Each of you will have 20 minutes, and then we will have discussion and audience question. So, without further ado, let us begin with our first speaker, Professor Fasli Jalal, who will talk about talent mobility within the framework of Transpatriot program. Professor Fasli Jalal, the floor is yours for 20 minutes.
Thank you, Bu Ayumi. Professor Baskaya, Dr. Dewa, ladies and gentlemen. Please, can my slide be shown? Yeah. First of all, I would like to appreciate the ministry to have the big shift, a big transformation from moving people to one area to another area, from providing asset, from securing basic infrastructure, etc. But now it's more on how to make sure that the transmigration is transformation of the area in totality. Not only human resources, not only asset, not only infrastructure, but the whole ecosystem. So the slide, lanjut. Next, yeah. So the whole system can be attracted to human resources, to investor, and also to people surrounding to have a better connection with the people who are transmigrate to the area. So in this aspect, I would like to appreciate this because now you have covered the settlements of the new people and also providing possibility for industrialization and also bringing talent because only talent can develop those, and then not only talent but with innovation, and then finally with more approach for sustainability. Next. So I think Professor Baskaya has enlightened us about the importance of understanding both push factors and pull factors of migration. We know, and this is a very long list, I just mentioned some, but I have to repeat what the Professor Baskaya has mentioned this morning. Next. But I think now rather than discussing a lot on push factor, I would like to discuss with Professor Baskaya and all of you how to make sure that we have more attractive area. So then the pull factor is the dominant factor. So the question is how we can recruit talent, how we can make area attractive to talents, and then what is needed in improving the territorial development, so then the talent can retain there. And also, in addition to that, we should also approach how to improve local capability, because the talent coming from outside is sometimes temporary, and each talent from outside should be questioned how much local champion they develop, and then how long they can stay there. If they have exit strategy, how much the all program, all process being owned by locality, and we have champion in the local. This is not easy process. But then finally, we have to ensure innovation is the grand factors for improving the growth, improving the welfare, and hopefully with sustainability in mind. So with this aspect, I think entrepreneurial spirit, enterprises is very important to be developed also. Next. How do we combine the mix of the talents to address the problem in the locality? Because, we have a professor from university, we have PhDs, we have master graduate, we have undergraduate, just finished they study, and then also mature student that also want to have some experience in the field. So by combining them together as planned by the Ministry of Transmigration, I think this is a big opportunity. It's not easy, it's long term. I'm a little bit afraid if we talk about just one period of the presidency, because this is more than just 5 years, maybe 10 years. But if we can really committed to this and consistent in delivering the process, I think we can see the result. How the multi-talents people from multidisciplinary and multi-level can work together, but not only working with them, by them, but inviting local champion, youth, women leader or activists, how they can be co-creator for finding solution based on the mapping of the problem they find in the locality, and then the mapping of the actors that can generate solution using different modalities, including using new technology. So I think this is one of the challenge, but it can be done. But we need long-term vision rather than short-term agenda. Next. I propose 10 stage for transformation process or cycle. One, we have to diagnose, map out what are in the area, all kind of data, from economic data, demographic data, social, culture, etc. We have to map out. This can be done by university, by the people from Transmigration ministries, and also any think tank, and maybe Professor Bakaya can also support this. But then what kind of multi-talents needed to be deployed, and then how we can validate the program fueled by the team using secondary data from desk analysis, but then validate the problem by using FGD, have some dialogue with local champion and local people, producer, activists, tribal leader, etc., to validate our broad problem of vision about the locality is connected and is understood and also agreed by local people. And then we can move to the force, work together to have baseline data. What is the real happening in the area? And then from that, we co-designer the intervention together. Start small. Don't go with big program. Start small, like experimenting first with some local people, and do and evaluate and do reflection again, and then growing, do scaling up of the program. And we need to build the local capacity, because sometimes the talents from outside will leave the area. But I think the success of the talented team is when they are not needed anymore, because they're creating the local champion. So if everything dependent upon the outside expert, I think we fail in the process. So the necessary condition at the end of the process, the multi-talented and multidisciplinary team from outside will be deemed unnecessary by locality. That's the success criteria. Next, so how can we also do three things? One, territorial diagnostic. This is, as I mentioned before, is very important. We would like to have some dashboard about the territorial problem, and also the potential of talents that can address the problem. And then we would like to do the baseline real data, because 5 years, 10 years from now, we revisited the data again and showing to the people what kind of indicator have been changed to the better, or still stay the same, or even to the worse, and then why that happened. And lessons learned is very important. And if this being documented using ICT and artificial intelligence, I think this will be helpful for the next cycle of the team. Let's say if every year we send the transpatriot to locality, we have all documentation about the process. Next, how we co-design and test small experiments. I think I talked to Dr. Dewa before we start the dialogue. The now is more and more, even social science have RCT, randomized control trial. Now, this is a big opportunity for the locality to have both qualitative, quantitative. That's why it's very important, the baseline data. And then use that data for questioning what kind of achievement do we want to have, and then how big the gap, and how the intervention can really address that. And start small, growing, but do a rigorous evaluation every step, and then we will see the result. And 10 years from now or 5 years from now, we can really show the impact of our program. Next, we have the knowledge ladder, yeah, because we need to explain to the locality, to local people, knowing why this is important, why this is needed. And then we demonstrate the usefulness of the intervention, because seeing is believing, and also knowing how, or seeing how. And then we practice together, both local people and the expert from outside, co-creation, and then working together. And then let's gradually local leader take responsibility. They will take the initiative. They will do the leadership, and then they will train also other local leader. So once the multiplier effect of the local champion happening, this a kind of the successful indicator of the external talents. Next, so work on the value chain, not only on production, but on all aspects. I think this is very important for us, and hopefully the expert working together with local people can discuss. Yeah, I think we need like even weekly meeting. If the team of expert coming to the locality, they have a weekly meeting and then the most robust meeting in every month, and do reflection and revise the intervention, and then record everything for the benefit of a next batch. So then we can improve not only productivity, but also adaptation of technology, and then developing enterprises, but also increasing income sustainably. Next. So role clarity across academic level, because we are bringing the professor, PhD, master, and then the graduate, newly graduate, and then also the mature student. This is a very good combination. If the university is really see this as a really bring the expertise to the field, learning from the field, and then combining disciplinary subject into one cohesive team, and then working together with locality, I think this is very, very powerful. But again, it needs long-term vision. We cannot be judged just by 3 years or 5 years, maybe even longer than that. But I think every step can be shown the, the kind of the small step create success, small success create big success. So stepping is very important. So I think what is the role of PhD or senior or professor, on the team, and then what is the role of the PhD, what is the role of master, and then down to the mature student in connecting to the local people. Yeah, I think this is very important for the successful of the intervention. Next, the question is, we bring many experts to the village, to the remote areas, etc. And sometimes we have more, visitation rather than readiness to listen, to absorb, and then to also know that the local people have their own knowledge. They know about the climate, they know about the land, they know about culture. So the first 2 to 4 weeks of the deployment of the team, they should really learn, listen and learn rather than promoting ideas from outside. And then we have to make sure that the outputs are determined first. From output, we go into how much the adoption of the technology of intervention by the community. And then the question is how we ensure that everybody seeing the outcome as a main target, and the own target, not only silo by disciplinary but team, but cohesive, multidisciplinary. And then finally, how we ensure the transformation is happening. The last 2 slides, reflection and continuity and sustain exit. As mentioned before, the success of the Transpatriot when the team not necessarily needed by the committee. They can say, bye-bye. You train us, we absorb, we have a capacity, we can do, we can continue, but sometimes we can really consult you once a while. But they are ready. They taking care of their own problem. They exercise together, become co-creator with the external team. But finally, they are the one who own the whole process. So I think the best team eventually makes itself unnecessary. For that, every member, student, mature student, newly graduate, master, and then PhD, have to ensure that they train local people. At least one talent should train at least 10 to 20 people. So if in one village during the deployment, they can train, let's say 150% and own the process, become agile in adapting the technology, and also bringing their own local genius. And I think this project will be successful, but it will take some time And it will take a lot of connection between local people, local champion, local youth, local women, and the expert and talents expert. Finally, let's create human capital compact. We based on our mapping, what kind of human capital needed for serving or to transform the area, and then prepare teams with community development capability, not only academic expert, not only academic expertise, and then use a stage cycle that I mentioned before, makes useful knowledge knowledge spills over, measure through local vision, local champion, and also local adoption. And finally, evaluate the developmental multiplier by showing how much the productivity increase, how much enterprise being established, how much job being created, and how much income have been gained, and finally, how sustain the innovation to increase the welfare of the community. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Fasli. Thank you, Prof. Fasli, for making it in time. So from Prof. Fasli presentation, I think there are some highlights that we can take notes. So talent mobility, in this case, Transpatriot program, must be understood broadly, not merely as the deployment of experts, but as a sustained efforts to create multiplier effect, particularly for improving local capability and also useful knowledge spillover. Now, so let's turn to Dr. Dewa Wisana, who will offer his perspectives on the dynamics of human capital and migration and the policy consideration for strengthening transmigration area. Dr. Dewa, you have 20 minutes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, His Excellency, Bapak Menteri, Profesor Baskaya, Profesor Fasli Jalal, Mbak Ayumi, and also distinguished guests. Thank you very much for having me here today. I am a demographer, although I am also economist by education. I would like to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes just to ask one question that usually a demographer would like to ask, and it's mostly related to this panel today. It is not about who moves, instead who stays. And let me show you the plan. Next slide, please. So there are three parts that I would like to discuss today. First is about the paradigm, where the paradigms already stand, and what Indonesia's own labor data says about what is pushing the people out. The second part, it's what makes a pull factor real, what theory requires it, and what the international experience actually shares so far that we can learn further. And lastly, the third part, I would like to propose a design, I call it the two-track design, that supposedly may answer how we should do it, or how should we know it, and then what kind of evidence we can develop further to make this program successful. So let me begin by conceding the argument I was expected to make today. Next slide. I was asked by the committee to argue that the Orde Baru model of transmigrations belong to the past. I do not need to, because the ministry already settled about it. Between 1950 until 2023, this program already resettled 2.2 million families, 9.2 million people, and it is one of the largest planned resettlement efforts in modern history. So the ministry already stopped moving household and started moving knowledge by having this new program. Team Ekspedisi Patriot already deployed 1,458 skilled people to 53 regions or kawasan, And also we have supposedly very near future the Beasiswa Patriot, the Patriot Scholarship that already opened so far now. Hopefully will be continue very soon. But I would like to suggest one thing. This paradigm is not yet a mechanism. The open questions is no longer whether the model should change, it is whether the new model has a theory of who stays. To build that theory, we have to be precise about what is pushing people out in the first place. Next slide, please. So this part, I would like to talk about the push. So the push is real, but it is a matching problem, not about a shortage. Next slide. So I'm from Demographic Institute. So I will always talking about populations, and then subset of the population is labor. This is Indonesia's open unemployment rate by level of education. This is based on our labor survey, national labor survey, that published this May. Primary school and below 2.3%, junior secondary 4.2%, senior secondary 6.2%, and so on. Particularly the higher education level, the bachelor level, and then vocational secondary. If you read this ladder, you take a look that the unemployment does not fall with education in Indonesia. It rises. The higher education that we have among our employment, the higher as well the unemployment rate. A graduate is about 2.5 times more likely to be unemployed than someone who left school after primary. In absolute terms, 1,033,000 Indonesians hold a bachelor degree or higher. They cannot find job at all. And still only 13% of our workforce hold only tertiary qualification at all. So I would like to strengthen these arguments that we do not have a shortage of graduates. We have graduates we cannot place. We cannot allocate into a proper place. Next, please. Let's see about our regions. So this is only a few of them. Look at Maluku, for example. Tertiary enrollment, there is a 48%, the second highest in Indonesia, even higher than Jakarta. Now, next to the column, youth not in employment, education, or training, we call it an EET. 28.5% among the highest as well in the country. And if you can see the North Maluku as well. So these provinces are not falling to produce graduates. They are producing them, but then we're losing them. So I want to be very careful here, because this is exactly where a well-meaning policy can go wrong. If the diagnosis that the Eastern Indonesia lack skilled people, the natural remedy is to send more people from Java. But Eastern Indonesia is already making them and will be making more. So the binding constraint is not the supply, it is the absorption. Whether a graduate who is already there can find work worth staying for. So which bring me to the word this whole panel is built about, the pull factor. Next slide, please. What makes the pull factor real? Next, please. So again, as an academia, I would always love to talk about theory. So this is a bunch of theory talking about migrations. Very quickly, some of them, Shastat saying that migration is an investment. Lee argue about what policy actually controls is rarely the origin or the destination. But then we have also Haris and Todaro, the most favorite one among economic students, and Robak. But I would like to highlight one of my favorite, particularly, Borjas. In our Indonesian language, we call it Borjas, right, Bapak Ibu, yeah. But since he's a Brazilian, we pronounce his name is Borjas. So we pronounce J with H. So Borjas is one of my favorite, and I would like to dwell on further. Borjas shows that the directions of selection of the migrants as well as the locations It's depend on the return to skill at the destination relative to the origin. It means that if you get more benefit in the destination area compared to the origin, people will move. After they move, they will stay, as long as the benefit is still higher. So where the return to skill is lower at the destination, financial incentive do not attract the best. They attract the people who could not place elsewhere. It means that those who move, those who migrate, if we only rely on financial incentive, we may fall into a wrong target, or wrong people who potentially contribute to the locations. So if you remember our previous data about the unemployed graduates, if we offer above market pay, for example, without a productivity screen, that is a pool we are recruiting for. I raise this not as a criticism, just as a note, because it is testable. The theory is there, the empirical studies based on the result from various studies from many countries, it's already there as well. Because it is far cheaper to test now than waiting to discover later in 2029 by the end of this period. So a pull factor is not a slogan. I would like to remind you all again that the pull factor is not a slogan. It is a testable prediction about who arrives. And Borjas, my favorite economist in this case, warns it may be fall into the wrong people. So much for the theory, okay? In Indonesian language, we call it theory. So I'll stop there. Let's see the experience from various countries. Here's what happened when countries actually tried. Next slide, please. You see, there's a bunch of countries actually already attempt to do the similar approach on migrations. Australia made it legal condition of the visa. Korea, this is one of my favorite example, relocate 153 public institutions. So they move the institution first, and then people follow the institutions. It is one of the largest deliberate decentralizations among the OECD countries. We also have Japan. Also, we have Canada, Norway, and Brazil. They are also following the same suit. And I would like to draw your attention to Brazil case, because this is, I think, the closest situation with us in Indonesia. 35,000 doctors placed, but the net gain was only a third of the gross. So once again, the example is we move doctor, very specific skill. Because central placement displaced posts, the municipalities were already financing themselves. So every one of these programs paid for arrival. Once again, we paid people to move to a particular location, but none of them actually paying for them to stay. Yeah, so that's my questions. We need to care more about who stay rather than who move. It's quite easy to move people at this moment nowadays in the current situations, but it's quite challenging to put people stay in that particular locations. So there is one exception in the whole evidence base among these countries, and it runs in the opposite directions. Next slide. We have our neighbors, Thailand, actually the best case in this case. Thailand since 1994, so their problems focusing on doctors in the rural district. They did not import doctors into periphery, so they produced doctor from the periphery. So there are three approaches among them. Recruit the students from the target district under a separate quota, and then train them clinically at the nearest nearest provincial area, nearest hospital to the capital city, and then bond them to their home district. The keyword here is bonding them into the local area that with being targeted. So Japan also follows suit. Yeah, similarly, they are using the same instrument with the same logic. So the idea between Thailand and Japan for us, the findings underneath both is simple, and it's the most robust result from the entire literature that we have. So the strongest predictor that someone stays in a place is that they came from it and they were trained there in that location. So I'm aware that I've already spent too much on theory, empirical, talking like as an academia, feeling like this is a lecturer. But let me come home now. Let's see Indonesia case. Next slide. There are two cases from Indonesia. See, Indonesia also already have the experience. The first study is conducted by Bazi, Gaduh, Rothenberg, and Wong. It's already published in one of the prestigious journal, the American Economic Review. They are using quasi-random assignment. So it's basically the RCT, quasi-RCT, just like Professor Fasli mentioned before. So they found that, so they studied 2 million of our own transmigrations. So productivity substantially higher where the destination's agroclimate match with the skill of the migrants. So the keyword here is matching beats the qualifications. We need to find the matching skills among these migrants. The second study is based on our program from the Ministry of Health, the evaluations of Nusantara Sehat. Nearly 12,000 health workers being placed. And then when the assignment ended, 60% applied for another posting and 25% entered the civil service. So the barrier among them, according to these studies, is about the handover. After the training, after they are being targeted, and then what happened afterwards? So they need to be recruited by the local regions. So the leak is not about the recruitment, it is at the handover of these migrants. So what would I actually do with that? So what should we do? I offer 2 tracks. Next slide, please. So this is a dual track design, I call it. Next slide. So the track A is for the people at the kawasan that need to know. It is strengthened that, for example, here, the Transpatriot already done about it. At least there are 3 moves. We need to package, we need to show them about the pull factors around the family. It's not only the recruit, it's not only the individual. We need to send the signal that if you stay there, it's not only for you, for yourself, but also for your family. Okay, so we need to develop an institutional approach on this. Educational facilities, health facilities that may suitable with their family. The second, this is the one that we learned from the Nusantara Sehat case, the handover. Agreed the handover before deployment, not after. So it will give them a signal about the certainty about their future there. The third one, we need to tie the anchor institutions budget to the local contract revenue. It means ensuring when the handover is done, the local government certainly will accept them and make sure that they will have a career in that location. The next slide, this is the track B, grow and return. Again, I would like to highlight who stays, and I want to make sure that they will stay as long as possible, even until the 3rd generation, for example. So here in track B, we need to build a pipeline that eventually make attraction unnecessary. So I'm really sorry, Prof. Jalil, I already moved forward a little bit. Not only about attractions, but attraction is not necessary anymore. Because we want to make sure that they will stay there. So reverse the direction of the scholarship pipeline. Okay, because I know Beasiswa Patriot is not yet there, but it should be. Beasiswa Patriot today sends targeted like 1,100 recipients to 7 universities. UI is one of them. I have one of my professor here, Professor Hamdi. So I'm teaching in that university. And I say this with respect. Yeah. But according to our colleague in Thailand evidence, 2 years in Jakarta or Bandung, for example, building network and partners and expectation, it will make them anchor to Java Island rather than going back to the regions. So we need, again, to send a signal that going back and stay there much more beneficial than stay in Java or in any university of the origin they will study. So reserve the quota for application from the target kawasan, move the 2nd year to do their thesis or to do their field work into the kawasan, and then ask them to write a service bond to the kabupaten, not to the republic, not to the central government. This is a design choice. Once again, this is a design choice. it is not necessarily adding up more rupiah. We don't need more money on this. You just need to redesign. So the second also, let the local coalition pick the advantage, I call it, because again, we need to involve the local government. They are the one who absorb these workers. The third one, design the return, not only the departures. Sending them to take a training everywhere, we also need to make sure they will come back. Okay, next slide, please. So, today we celebrate the number of skilled people placed, but once again, I would always trying to strengthen this. But this is only the input. We need to ensure about the outcome. So the outcome is a different number, ladies and gentlemen. How many are still in kawasan a year further? How many of them will earn above the threshold? What kind of threshold we will use? And whether there is a knowledge being transferable and demonstrated at the locations. Okay, so here's the part that matter. It can be built now and it can be built even further now. We need to start. But as Professor Fasli Jalal already mentioned, we need the baseline. The baseline has to exist before the next cohort is chosen. And once selections happen, the comparison group is gone. And it cannot be reconstructed afterwards. So let me close our statement here today. Next slide, please. So in one sentence, I would like to say that the first generations of transmigrations answers where people should move. But now we move to the second one. The second generations has to answer who stays. Please underline that statement. Who stays? And that's the questions that we are not yet measuring. Probably we can discuss it further today and make sure that in the next 5 years or even 10 years, we will be able to find a very big positive outcome that's really good. Grow and return by recruiting from the kawasan, training in the kawasan, and bonding with the local regions, and measure in the 5th year, in the 10th year, and so on. Not only measuring today or this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Dewa. I'm glad that our two speakers are really good in keeping time, so I don't have to remind you. So from Dr. Dewa presentation, I think he emphasized the real challenge of the talent mobility program is understanding not only the pull factors to attract, right, but pull factors to make them stay. So I think we will discuss it further. And let's move to our third speaker, Professor Sonar Baskaya, who will deliver his presentation. We'll talk about attracting, matching, and embedding high-quality human capital in KAETT. Professor Baskaya, you will have 20 minutes for presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you again, Mr. Minister, Professor Dewa, Professor Fazli, and distinguished guests. So again, it's my great pleasure to share my reflections about how can talent can be attracted, matched with the necessities of the ecosystem, and make sure that they embed into the continuation of the high quality human capital in the areas. So, like my colleagues here, the question is all about how can we make sure that the long-lasting regional capability is achieved. So we are all agreeing with the premise that it's not about temporary allocation of the talent. It's about making sure that talent allocation will embed into the knowledge generation, as a result of which, even when they get back to where they come from, there is still the accumulation and continuation of the appropriate human capital. So, in a sense, this is about transmission of the individual skills to the rest. But for doing that, of course, I can also, I'm going to maybe reflect on my own experience when I was a fresh PhD and I was going back to Central Bank of Turkey with, in a sense, a similar objective. making sure that the human capital that we retained or that we acquired, I was a government fellowship student in the United States, would be transmitted to the local community. You can call it the research department at the Central Bank of Turkey. So in a sense, the question is all about not only who arrives as the skills, but also about what type of engagements they become part of, and how are the ways of both being attached to the tasks and also making sure that there is a good interaction, not in terms of transmitting their skills into others, but also bringing different skills and maybe getting some sort of what we call the increasing returns. And as a result, we are all thinking about the following thing. How can this thing be part of a self-moving mechanism, as a result of which the institutions, the enterprises, the societies keep on continuing the knowledge accumulation? Let me skip this thing because we've already, and therefore, as my previous panelists say, it's not only maybe about the attracting. Of course, I'm not in a position as Professor Dawa has in terms of reflecting on the Indonesian studies, but at least in terms of first principles and also what we know about migration literature, it's not only about attracting. It is about allowing the sustainable interaction. It is about making sure that the talent, when they are located to a region, is consistently interacting with the group of people who will be, let me say, jointly producing new set of human capital. And this can be also about building professional networks, local attachment, and also the necessities that are for the family's attachment. Of course, when we think about the human capital, we can think through more broadly about not only a specific task, and not only a human capital that can deliver a specific task, we can think of it also more broadly. For example, somebody who has the appropriate techniques, methods to be part of a production process, yes, these are the people who can increase the productivity. But more broadly, we can think of also entrepreneurship as part of the human capital. We can think about people who can transfer the knowledge as part of the human capital. And I think for that thing, there's a huge amount of work that is on the shoulders of collaborations with the universities, institutes, things like that. And also connectivity in terms of the human capital connecting with the rest of the economic structures. And finally, being part of the institutions that will make sure that this is a self-feeding mechanism. But as also Professor Deva was saying, and I think we are all, inspired by the nice paper of Bazi, Samuel Bazi and the others, it's about the match on one side. Because if the skills do not match the necessities, which is a function of maybe the local needs, endowments, the type of business activities, then first of all, we can't expect the relocated human capital to stay there permanently. So there should be a clear role. And therefore, we need to make sure that the places are allowing the human capital to interact, because I'm going to reflect on my own experience, and I mentioned it to Mr. Minister yesterday. When a human capital is moved from a location of abundance of human capital to scarcity of human capital, one of the concerns that they have is my human capital going to be depreciating because I'm not going to be interacting with the others? Or am I going to be retaining my human capital? And let me tell you the following narrative from my own life. It was right after the economic crisis in Turkey 2001, which was similar to 1997 Indonesia. And Central Bank of Turkey had to invest in the research department, which can, run models, write down general equilibrium models, make econometric forecasts. Of course, for that thing, the typical place of hiring is what we call the job market in the United States or in the UK. So for Turkey, we were not going to Australia, but UK or United States. However, a person coming from UK or United States will ask the following question. Is there any other colleague like me to whom I can discuss my research? Is there any person with whom I can collaborate? Such things. And what did central bank do? And also, this was my maybe worry as well. However, at least with the policy intervention of the central bank back then, that problem was resolved for me to some extent. This is a coordination problem. You can either have the critical mass of people who can generate knowledge spillovers, or you can have zero. And what central bank had done was sending people like the LPDP maybe, sending people to the PhDs and implementing conditions for them to serve for minimum years. But then all of a sudden, in 2006, 2007, when we wanted to hire more people from the job market, we already had 15, 16 people at the research department. And we could easily say, so in 2001, we were like 5, 6. But in 2007, we were 16, as far as I remember. And then when we made the offer to someone, if they ask, okay, is there any person that I'm going to be interacting with? We say there are 16 PhDs from US, UK. And all of a sudden, we were very successfully hiring from places like Chicago, LSE, Rochester. In short period of time, our research department increased to 46 PhDs. It's all about assuring that people who want to move there, who also has some sort of the problem, is my human capital going to depreciate there if I'm there alone, was tackled with solving a coordination failure, otherwise it would have been. And therefore, we need to think through how we can develop productive ecosystems which the human capital will feel as part of. And this is not only about moving people, this is about making sure that all the infrastructure, access to market, institutions, firms are also ready to embrace the human capital of the people. And this thing, again, maybe I mentioned a lot regional colleagues at the ministry. Again, this starts with identifying what are the regional necessities. What is the gap? What is the local capabilities? What are the things that are needed? What capacities needs to be there temporarily? What capacities should be there going forward in the long run? So in a sense, this is, just as Professor Deva said, it's a matching problem. We need to make sure that right skills are matched with institutions who will both allow them to interact effectively with their incentives. Incentives are everything, but at the same time, in line with their skill sets. So, because we make the choices both based on our endowments and our preferences. No? Okay, then some of the pull factors should entail things like regional career accelerators. For example, the person who is moving there should be happy with the mission, should be happy with the resources, should be happy with the idea of having peers around them. Just I was reflecting on my own personal story. Knowing that they may have progression, both in terms of promotion or in terms of being recognized as the contributions, because some of us may just be happy to be recognized from our contributions. and also freedom to explore, and also engaging in the networks. These are all, I think, different sides of what Professor has already mentioned about how we can retain. However, one key decision about the talent mobility is, for some people, it may be an individual decision, but for many others, it may be a joint household decision. On the professional side, somebody may be looking for whether the remuneration is competitive, whether there are career progression opportunities, whether there are different types of compensation. However, the reality requires us, the allocation and search is a joint search for the households. You need to make sure that there is a healthcare and schools for your kids. You need to make sure that the household safety are matching with your needs, and you need to make sure that your spouses can find employment, or if they don't want to be employed, at least something that they'll be happy with. So these are important things which makes the family as part of the important retaining factor. And housing, education, healthcare, dual carriers, connectivity, these are all parts of the things that will matter for somebody's willingness to move. But at the same time, when we are talking about the decision about the family, then I can also think about my case, where when I was moving to Glasgow, I of course need to think about my family moving with me as well. Is the society open? Is the society going to be inclusive? Is the other elements of the life going to be fit for the overall household rather than just one person? So these are very important things. But at the same time, I think on one side, the retaining requires identifying if there are any push factors. And of course, I mean, the push factors, or if you see there is some sort of, job breakups, things like that, this may be a symptom about a bigger problem in the regional ecosystem. So it may be some social elements. There may be, for example, professional isolation, uncertainty, weak career prospects, exclusion, especially if the existing community has very strong rules and do not have much of inclusion. So all these things, of course, service deficits, these are the important things. Therefore, another important thing is to make sure that we get the appropriate signals from each and every departure. And therefore, I think this is also part of a scorecard or a data for us to understand how best we can improve the retainment. And for those things, of course, we may also need to distinguish between different types of employment. For example, some people may be there as permanent. Some people may be there just on the rotational basis. For example, in many government civil service jobs. In some cases, it may be circular, and in some cases, it may be like a remote network type of things. Note that these different types of mobility models are not based on the individual having to stay there forever. But it's all about delivering mechanisms to make sure that there is a constant interaction between the human capital and the needs of the place. So therefore, another type of mobility model that to keep in mind may not be about moving the people, but looking for the best model for mobility. Of course, this is something one of the flagship programs are addressing, the local in particular. And again, if you look at the old transmigration evidence, one of the things which prevented the social inclusion, coherence, and eventually maybe development of joint mindset interactions has been maybe accidental, unintended consequences of these programs on the local inequality. In particular, it may be the case, it may not be the case. But here what we need to manage is not the reality, but the perceptions. If the local societies perceive that there are superior benefits to the residents, or there are, different hierarchies or different types of favorable outcomes for the newcomers, then this may be something like a underminer for the potential collaboration. Therefore, one of the other things to make sure that the human capitals retain, but not only retain, but also interact to build up more information as increasing returns, is to make sure that the local actors are part of the stakeholding. And they are, for example, having necessary interactions and necessary also belief. For example, they don't perceive any kind of a glass ceiling as part of the operations there. Of course, I mean, I can be very quick in that thing. There may be also, as part of a diversification portfolio, it may be good to look for different types of demographies, because I mean, we don't like to put all the eggs in one basket. For example, in some cases, we may be looking for young graduates. In some cases, we may be looking for experienced professionals. In some cases, there may be expats or diaspora or Indonesians abroad who may just be looking for some social or economic opportunity to come back. Retired specialists. So these may be all part of the movements towards the human capital. But we need to keep in mind that we need to make sure that we are retaining the capability. So in a sense, you may think of the human capital as something that exists locally, independent from the individuals. Therefore, maybe the issue is not making sure that, let's say, Sonar Baskaya will stay forever in the area. But the skill set that Sonar Baskaya brings will be staying there, maybe with interactions with the locals or some rotational assignments, things like that. So this is the important things. And maybe having this, as Professor Deo was mentioning, having this exit may even be buying in more people in terms of this thing. Okay, this may be entailing, of course, with different types of knowledge production ecosystems. And these things may be very much interplaying with the 5 programs that we've already talked through since the morning. Okay, I can skip maybe this one because of the time. But one thing maybe is the score capability, scorecard, to make sure that how we are attracting, how we are transferring, how we are making sure that we are matching the appropriate skills. And we should not forget, this is already the messages of Professor Fazlı and Deva. This is not about how many people we move or how many resources we move. It's about what remains after the specialists leave and what regional capacity is retained after making sure that there is no longer need of government resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Baskaya. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think the highlights of your presentation is the focus of the policy should not simply the quantification of the deployed workers, but it should be focused on the worker-place match. So from all the 3 speakers today, we now have a highly coherent policy proposition, and they talk not only about the attraction, but also retention and also the matching of the worker and place. Before I open the floor for the questions, I think I would like to use my privilege as moderator to ask some follow-up questions to all the 3 speakers. The question is for all of you. So I think we agree, also me agree, that attraction is much more easier than retention. Retention is the real challenge, right? So if we had to choose or recommend a policy shift or additional policy from financial recruitment incentive for recruitment into other policy options like family services, professional pathways, local partnership, or employment absorption, which policy would have the most consequences and will have a great effect on useful knowledge spillover. And also, I think we all agree that relevant outcome from the Transpatriot program and policy is not the number of the deployed experts, but whether local capability remains and also the establishment of knowledge spillover system. Do you have recommendation on indicator how should we measure or adopt the successful of useful knowledge spillover into this Transpatriot framework? I think I would like to invite Professor Fasli first for your response.
Yeah, I think it should be clear. Yeah, are we going to deploy the talents that are already have their own expertise, but multidisciplinary and different layers to a transmigrant area by assuming that they will help the people from locality to understand the problem and then guide it in co-creation what kind of solution can be implemented. And gradually it is being proved that intervention that they create together is effective, and then they can scale out, and then they can also share to the neighboring village. So seems to me who will stay. If we have PhD, I think it would be too much to accept they will stay, yeah, for 10 years, yeah, except if this is being a part of the contract on the scholarship.
Okay.
But if we want to make sure that the team, the number of the people that we aim for staying is newly graduate or the mature student. How we target them to really understand the problem in locality, supporting by master, supporting by PhD, supporting by professor, but they are the one who being empowered. So the probability for them to stay is much bigger than the different layer. So the way they being trained, they being teach, they being, they have the like internship, etc., has to address the patient on particular aspect of the rural problem. In this setting, what is the combination of the support from university? Because we have the different study program, different center, but are we going to really listen to the map out of the baseline and then do this the best as possible, as interactive as possible, and bringing both quantitative and qualitative data? So then use this to map out who will be participate, what kind of discipline to participate in this, and then leveling. Why do we need professor? Why do we need PhD? Why do we need master? Why do we need the newly graduate? Or why do we need the mature student? This is quite different from, we develop attractiveness in locality and free fall. Whoever want to go there, please go there, and if they like it and they stay. This is a kind of, very independent program. But the ministry, I think, really trying to bringing the talents, working together with locality, so locality can empower and can understand the problem, can be also see, they can also create some solution, and then later on own them and continue the journey, and maybe even scale out to others. So it seems to me, what is our main objective? Are we going to really empower the talent to go there and find their own job and stay there with different layers? Or are we going to structure which level that need to stay and own the program, but with interaction with locality. In this aspect, I think the bringing the professor or PhD and even some master need to be discussed for what role, for how long, for what particular activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fasli. Next, Mas Dewa.
Yeah, I just want to echo again what Professor Fasli already mentions. But also I would like to highlight that I don't think that there will be a single policy that effective enough to ensure what kind of objective that we would like to pursue, right? Again, I'm using my hat as a demographer. We are talking about the life cycles. We need to think comprehensively, starting from the recruitment process, and then what happened later after we send them into the locations. But don't forget, if we want them to stay there longer, we also need to consider what Professor Baskaya already mentions, how they will stay there, what kind of situation they will face off, and so on. So then I would like to say that we need to stop focusing only on the attraction side. Instead of, like Professor Fasli also already mentioned, we need to think a little bit more, you know, actively engage with various policy, especially related to the local governments. I always mentioning several times about empowering, engaging the local governments, because again, those who are moving there need to be accepted by the people there as well, right? So administratively, the local government need to accept them. So we need to find a scheme or mechanism how to accept them formally, administratively, according to the registrations, beyond recording them only, that they already stay there. So again, my point here is like there is no single policy that we need to put him as a champion. Instead of, we need to put each policy in the dimensions of the life cycle process of those who are being recruited, later being migrant, and then later being the stayer, right? And then we can frame this into a process of how enriching the capabilities of these migrants interacted with the local one, and then bring the benefit all together with the people staying there as well. So that's the key point, I guess, that I would like to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Dewa. Professor Baskaya.
Thank you very much. So maybe I will reflect on what I was mentioning as the definition of the problem as the talent retention, human capital retention. When I say human capital retention, as I said, I'm not saying, yes, we need to retain there Professor Fazli or Professor Deva or Professor Soner Baskaya. We are just saying there needs to be a talent, human capital, which will do the job. Of course, I'm with you in the sense that the strategies for talent retention differs from one type of human capital to the other. For example, if we broadly define human capital and say the entrepreneurs or the people with entrepreneurial skills, of course, for those you want people who will like to be there for a very, very long time. But for some tasks, especially if we are talking about, for example, how we can incorporate these small and medium-sized enterprises in those regions into global value chains, and if, for example, it requires some, let's say, agro-industry engineer who needs to provide their service, it doesn't need to be the same person who will stay forever. Maybe it may be rotation. And let me give you the following metaphor, which may or may not work, but at least it can be a food for thought. If you look at the embassies and the ambassadors, so for example, when Indonesia is appointing an ambassador to United Kingdom, to London, they don't care about having the same ambassador or a particular name or whatever, or they just think about an ambassador who will act in line with the national benefits of Indonesia. And those posts are for 4 years. Then the same person maybe as the next move will go to another continent, another country. But it's all about making sure that a human capital that will deliver a particular task is there. Okay, are we saying that there's a disruption in the talent retention or task delivery? No. We are talking about people who are periodically moving from one country to the other. But at the end of the day, with a certain task, certain discipline, we are talking about the undisrupted continuation of the service. So therefore, depending on what type of human capital we are talking about, maybe the retention is also thinking slightly beyond whether we can retain physically the person there, and maybe think through whether we can think through the human capital or the service permanently retained. And I think this can be, of course, this will require different types of work models, but this can be also one of the solutions.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Baskaya. I think it's a huge homework for the Ministry of Transmigration. So it's not only like the migration retain, but also the human capital spillover, the capital itself, whether it stays or not, right? Okay, so it's already nearly 3. Do we still have time? Huh? Q&A? Okay, we still have time for Q&A. So I would like to open floor for questions. Q&A for about how much time we have left? 5 minutes?
I think we can allocate 2 questions.
2 questions. Okay, 2 questions. If you are, kalau ragu-ragu tanya bahasa Inggris, silakan tanya bahasa Indonesia, saya akan bantu menerjemahkan. We have 1 question here. There's a lot. 1 question here and 1 question on the right, I think.
Okay.
Please mention your name and affiliation.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rashid. I'm from the Ministry of Transmigration. Thank you for the opportunity to ask the questions in front of the remarkable panelists in front of us over here. I'll make it quick. So regarding the pull factor, transmigration also has a value, and I quote this from our ministry, is large industrialization with transmigrants as the workforce. So however, how do we make sure that everyone is included? Knowing that, as Daron Acemoglu stated in Why Nations Fail, that the Dutch Indies colonialists had extractive institutions in Moluccas. So for example, if Moluccas were to be the place for the next transmigration with nickel mining industrialization over there, how do we make sure that we avoid being repeating the history of extractive institutions in the industry? And also, what kind of participation can the local people have in such industry? Because we know that if we were talking about that the transmigrated area needs human capital, then it needs a long time to educate the people to be operators or even in managerial position. And I think that's all my question. Thank you so much. Tashikuler. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Rashid. Next one. Yes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Septian. I'm from Ministry of Transmigration. I work at department that the job is to build infrastructure at the transmigration area. So my questions is related to infrastructure, sir. I personally asked to Mr. Professor Soner Baskaya. So, Mr., I always curious why in modern countries, let's say Japan and maybe in the UK or Turkey, the rural areas, the infrastructure quality always great. For example, like the road quality always covered in asphalt without any holes. While in Indonesia, I always curious why we always like build, for example, first year we built the road at rural area only covered with soil. The next year we covered it with small stones. Just the next year, the third year, we covered it with asphalt. Just because that rural areas is not as strategic as national strategic destination or tourism development. That's why, and if you can see that all the rural areas in Indonesia that maybe 4 or 5 hours from city always have like bad infrastructure. That's how, I don't know why the regulation and maybe or the habit of our infrastructure development like that, but how the best practice at maybe at UK or Japan, how the government can build the rural areas infrastructure quality with a very high quality. I'm really curious with that. That's also, I think, related to the how rigid and unflexible the planning budgeting in Indonesia. Because, for example, like last year in one transmigration area, there are some houses in 7, 8 houses that were broken because of landslides, and we need to wait for next year to plan and budget the fund for renovation. How the maybe at UK or other countries that you know, is there any flexible system to like renovate infrastructure at rural areas? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we have two questions. First from Pak Rashid and the second one from Pak Septian. I think I will start with Prof. Baskara first. We changed the order.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Okay, so about the pull factors of transmigration, I totally agree, because the important thing is to make sure that there is the coherence of the locals and those who go there. But I think this is a different story. Maybe if I might have misunderstood the question, but this is a different story from Darono Cemolu's extractive institutions, because of course, on one side, you need to think about the skill complementarities between local people and the task. And there is a very vivid example. Actually, I mentioned it again to Mr. Minister yesterday. In early 1960s, when Glasgow's ship industry, which was the world leading, had declined, in order to make sure that the locals would not be unemployed, the government said, okay, they know how to weld the steel, they know how to build ship. Why don't we incentivize one of the car factories, which is Hillman by Roots, to move because there's already the human capital? I mean, it's a, on the face value, good argument. But the issue was, on one side, a logistic mismanagement, which required having to move the same car parts back and forth between Birmingham and Glasgow. But the worst problem was, later they realized, in 1 to 3 years' time, but after the fixed investment, irreversible fixed investment had been done, they realized that even the car production and ship production, which is all about, you know, welding the metal, are totally different. You need to have, for example, different skills for testing the product, different skills for building the product. Therefore, I think it would be quite a counterproductive, because we want the long-term sustainability of this thing, not short-term outputs. Therefore, it may be some sort of, I think, counterproductive, especially to think through, for example, having to, I'm not saying you offer that, but suppose there is some sort of a tendency to, for example, have local people's quota for some task. I think it would be unserving or negatively serving the purpose. However, in my opinion, it's not about what task that they have, but it's about whether they reach to the shared prosperity. And in particular, maybe they may not be getting a share from nickel industry, but a very vibrant nickel industry there will have ripple effects on a service sector, on other sectors. And I think maybe the locals may be specialized into, and the important thing is, as we were saying, the match into the tasks that their skills match, but because of the market externalities, because of the effect of the economic activity, okay, maybe they will not be working in the nickel mining, but they will be better off in terms of higher incomes. And I think that's the thing that we need to be thinking through, in my opinion. Going back to your question, actually, of course, I mean, each country's fiscal rules or the planning horizons are different in terms of the infrastructure investment. And actually, I must say, if you are just looking at the United Kingdom, I traveled to Bandung last week, and I must say the train that Indonesia has is much newer than the trains we typically take in UK. So I can't say that countries are flexible in launching the infrastructure needs, and in particular, especially for the developed countries, and it was one of the teams. I was one of the senior people during the G20 presidency in 2015, and one of our motto was investment in infrastructure and implementing those things. And it was the time of One Belt, One Road. But the key perception was, again, forgive me, I don't know the Indonesia very well, but especially the advanced countries have been already suffering from old infrastructures. And actually, even what the narrative was, it didn't come forward, but the narrative was, while the interest rates were still zero, because it was still the time of quantitative easing, why not the countries make use of that environment and invest in infrastructure? But at the same time, again, what I'm going to say cannot be generalized, but I'm not averse to gradual or phase-by-phase investments in the infrastructure. And in particular, this is because in some cases, especially when the infrastructure is opening to a totally new region, the government may first want to test, for example, how big a road they may need or how many lanes, things like that. But I mean, I can clearly say that Japan nowadays is, for example, the country with one of the highest debt to GDP. I don't think Japan also has the flexibility to do the infrastructure. And I think if you just look at the Indonesian story in the last 10 years, I think Indonesia has been one of the countries who caught up in terms of the infrastructures available to different businesses. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Dewa, quick response on the strategy to encourage local participation, as you already also discussed before.
Okay, quick response. I think that we need to, there are two ingredients that we need it actually. Number one is data. We need to have very good registration data in terms of identifying who are those being targeted and those who are not yet being targeted. So basically we need data about everybody. Otherwise, if we don't have those data, we don't know who will be our target, right? But the second thing is, especially because you are asking about how to increase the participations of the local. I think number one that probably lack of our understanding so far is about the informations. Right? So theoretically, when we talk about labor, about people who participate in particular industries or economic activities, there are at least two groups of workers that we always identify. Number one is what we call a direct worker. Direct worker, basically those who work in those particular industry, in the mining, nickel mining, for example, or any other factories that we develop. But the one that we forgot to analyze and identify further, those who are, we call it indirect workers. So basically those workers occurs in relations to this particular industry and then develop their own economic activities, right? If you have one particular factory there or mining, there will be a restaurant, there will be hotels, there will be retailers and many others type of job being developed and then attracting more people to come in there. So we need this kind of information. What kind of job actually being open there? And then what kind of the other indirect job, being served or being open following these new industries. So I think there are two ingredients that I would like to offer. Number one, again, about the data. We need more information about who are they and what kind of activities they are doing there. So then we can prompt what kind of approach, interventions, serving them with the better conditions. The second one, of course, serving these informations, right? This labor market information, we call it, understanding how much job actually required, what kind of skill, as Professor Praya already mentioned. If we need more engineer there, is it the local can provide it or we need to import it from other regions? We need information about this. Supposedly that the local not yet being able to provide it, then expectedly in the long run, we have a plan like, oh, knowledge transfers. We need to train the local to be able to replace, for example, this kind of skill, or adding up to the additional skill already have from the outside, something like that. So, but again, these two ingredients need to be focusing on in the life cycles manners, right? We need to think like by the time the industry being open, what happened next? What happened in the next 15 years? What happened in the next 20 years, right? So because the principal idea that we want to maintain, like this kind of businesses, this kind of economic activities need to be persistent, need to be available as long as possible, as long as our republic stand up here, right? So I guess that's my response about it. Thank you very much for the questions, really good.
Okay. Professor Fasli, with the major pull factor is the industrial activities.
Thank you, Wimi. I think two things. Yeah, I agree with Dr. Dewa. We need to have a very comprehensive data on the area. And then from population side point of view, from the commodities point of view, from technology available, and also the human resources from locality. And then if not available, where can we bring those expertise? And we have to combine assessing the potential of locality. So the providing scholarship, providing mentoring, upskilling is one of the most important aspects. Bringing the sequencing of the investment, for example, for the industrialization. But not only bringing people from outside, but empowering people from local is very important. Because of that, I think we need a kind 5 to 10 years planning for the area. Here, I think university can really help. If university can gather all expertise in the university, and especially if they are quite close to the area, and also not only one university, maybe consortium. So even though some from Java, but with a combination with local university, so the consortium may be very strong, support for data, for analysis of the baseline, and then do really, very comprehensive qualitative and quantitative data collection, and then map out what can we do for the next 5 to 10 years in the locality, and what kind of team needed to be invited from university and from the ministry and also from other relevant ministries, and working together. And then, but this concept not only being designed at the government outside location, but discuss, validate what we are thinking, validate with the local people. And then gradually we can see different pathway of local can be taking up the position later on, but need some training or even scholarship, or how the university people can really support every layers of the, of the activities needed in the developing the industrialization, or even not big industrialization, because depending upon the commodity, the market, etc. So every technology that can be introduced and adopted by locality is really important. In that regard, I think university is very important to be collaborate with us. Thank you.
Thank you for the response for the panelists. So we come to the end of our panel discussion. Allow me to highlight some messages from this panel. First, the transmigration of transmigration area. The transformation of transmigration area is not principally about moving people. There's so much more to it. And productive matching, it's important. And the last one, I think, also how we combine not only migrant but for local people. So useful knowledge spillover must be deliberately designed, not only assumed. So, I think there's a lot of messages that we can gain from this discussion. I hope this dialogue will contribute to practical, evidence-based steps toward transmigration areas. On behalf of the panel, please join me to thank Professor Sonar Baskaya, Professor Fasli Jalil, and Dr. Dewa Wisana for their valuable insight. Please join me in expressing our gratitude to all the three panelists by giving them a big applause.
Thank you, Dr. Ayumi. All panelists, please have a quick drink first. And so delighted to see His Excellency Minister Muhammad Iftitah Sulaiman Surya Nagara back here with us. Hope you find our first panel discussion insightful. We'd like to convey our sincere appreciation to our co-panelist and moderator. May now I invite to the stage Acting Director General of Economic Development and Transmigration Community Empowerment, Dr. Insinyur Harlina Sulisyorini MSE, to present tokens of appreciation on behalf of the Ministry of Transmigration. Kindly take center stage. Panelists, co-panelist, and moderator. Thank you so much for the insightful lecture, discussion, ideas, and framework that is ready to be implemented. As it was discussed early on, the final policy test. Success is regional capability that no longer depends on the original expert. Yes, gentlemen, ladies, please take center stage. Let's commemorate this wonderful partnership. Give your best smile to the camera. 3, 2, 1. Captured once more. 3, 2, 1. Yes, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of applause once more for our panelists, co-panelist, and moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now gearing up for our second panel discussion. Thank you so much. If I may highlight some interesting exchange from the discussion is to stop moving household and start moving knowledge. The question now is whether the new model is retaining. Attraction is well-funded, retention is where it fails. So it is important to match and to have proper framework because a match beats qualification. Design the return, not only the departure. Also important to note that avoid creating a privileged external enclave. And again, what is the final policy test? Success is regional capability that no longer depends on the original expert. Once again, we would like to appreciate Dr. Ayumi, all panelists, Professor Fasli Jalal, Dr. Dewa Wisana, and Professor Sonar Baskaya. Later on, we will continue with our second panel discussion. We also would have Professor Sonar Baskaya later on stage. And our second panel discussion will focus on local commodities, leading service sectors, industrialization, downstream synergy, and collaboration. Our team is prepping the stage at the moment. We would like to say hi to all participants joining us online via live stream. Hello and warm welcome from Jakarta. Thank you so much, Patriots, for joining us today. And we hope that today's discussion will give you more ideas, thoughts to execute for better Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off our second panel discussion is our moderator, a seasoned journalist and news anchor at CNBC Indonesia with extensive experience across major national broadcast networks. Holding a master's degree in communication from LSPR Jakarta, Her deep background in media and public affairs makes her perfectly positioned to lead today's discussion. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Ms. Shafinas Nahyar.
Thank you so much. Boleh berikan tepuk tangan untuk acara kita siang hari ini. Thank you so much for inviting me. Terima kasih. Mr. Riftita, terima kasih. And ladies and gentlemen, as what been introduced, I'm Shafinas Nahyar. I'm the news anchor for CNBC Indonesia. It's my pleasure to be your host, to be your moderator for the second discussion. My honor to also in the same stage with wonderful speaker I would like to invite later. But before I invite all the speaker here, I would like to tell you about the background of the second panel discussion. That we know for years, Transmigration has no longer seen as a program to relocate people to new areas. The government is seeking to shift this perspective toward the development of productive and integrated economic regions. And through the transmigration transformation, transmigration areas are being developed not only as places for people to live, but also as a new centers of economic activity that capable of developing local flagship commodities, increasing value added through industrialization and downstream processing, creating employment opportunities, increasing community incomes, attracting investment, expanding access to markets and financing, and also fostering collaboration among the government, private sector, communities, academia, and financial institutions. So we're gonna discuss how transmigration areas can leverage the value chain from production areas into integrated economic hub that attract investment, create quality employment, and generate greater value for local communities. And why this discussion become very important? Because achieving this transformation requires insights and perspective from the business community, investors, academics, financial institutions, and also economic stakeholders to address some practical questions. So what gonna be the question? Which commodities have the greatest potential? How can they be developed into higher value products? Who will invest? How can this investment be financed? How can these products gain access to broader markets? And many, many questions. So we're gonna have 4 panelists here. I would like to invite one by one. Let's start with Mr. Rizal Afandi Lukman, expert team to the Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs. Bapak boleh duduk sebelah sini? Sebelah sana. Okay. Terima kasih. And then the second panelist, co-panelist, Mr. Yoga Afandi, as Senior Executive Director at International Department of Bank Indonesia. Give a big round of applause. My third co-panelist, Mr. Arif Anshori Yusuf, as member of National Economic Council of the Republic of Indonesia atau yang dikenal DEN RI. Berikan tepuk tangan. Sebelah sana. And last but not least, Mr. Soner Baskaya. Please welcome Mr. Soner Baskaya. Thank you so much, Mr. Soner, Pak Rizal, Pak Yoga, Pak Arif. Thank you so much for your time to come to this second discussion with me. So we're gonna start with presentation. We're gonna start with Mr. Rizal Afandi Lukman, and then we're gonna have 20 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll end it with question and answer. So to Mr. Rizal, 20 minutes, the time is yours. Boleh berikan tepuk tangan untuk Bapak Rizal.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, His Excellency Bapak Menteri, Pak Fasli Jalal, my senior in Bappenas, as well as distinguished colleague, Professor Baskaya, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts on how Indonesia Transmigration area can evolve into productive economic clusters. My central argument today is very simple. The future of transmigration should not be defined primarily by the settlement or the location of people, but by the creation of productive economic opportunities, as been mentioned by our moderator earlier. We need to transform transmigration area into investment-ready economic zone through productivity improvement, industrialization, downstreaming, stronger local enterprises, multi-stakeholders collaboration. And this is very important as I think I just have a little chat to Bapak Menteri that the transmigration need to have a strong collaboration from other ministries. The Transmigration Ministry cannot work alone. Need to have a support from other ministries, as we can see go along to my presentation. Next slide, please. This requires a fundamental paradigm shift. The traditional model started with land, settlement, agriculture, and commodity production. We have to move to the new paradigm where we should begin with land, people, infrastructure, institution, technology. Technology is applied technology. Applied technology can increase the agricultural production that can improve the yield, whatever crops the people living there, as well as also in empowering and also developing the market. So it's not only for producing, but we also need to create the market ecosystem, whether it is integrated to the nationwide networks or logistic, as well as also to integrate to the global value chains. This also changed the strategic role of the Ministry of Transmigration. The ministry should increasingly become the strategic orchestrator of regional economic transformation, bringing together policies, infrastructure, human capital, technology, investment, as well as market. In other words, the ministry doesn't need to execute everything itself. Its role is to make all these elements work together within each area. Next slide, please. But industrialization cannot simply be administratively mandated. We should start with economic fundamentals.
For the presentation.
Okay, so we will come later. First, we need to identify the real comparative advantage of each area. Its land, agroclimate, natural resources, location, tourism assets, as well as human capabilities that has been a lot mentioned by the previous speakers. Second, convert that comparative advantage into competitive advantage by adding technology, skills, infrastructure, logistic, quality, and management. And I discovered that one of the also transmigration area is also is a place where the one of the important crop for Indonesia, palm oil, is located. So I learned this palm oil production for the smallholders. Productivity is very low compared to the industry nationwide. So there is a room to improve the productivity of the palm oil business in the transmigration area. And third, to determine where the area can realistically compete in the value chain. The key question should therefore not be what factory should be built, but the question which value chain can become commercially competitive from the location. Next. I would suggest the three economic engines should guide the transformation, because for the next 2 decades, we are aiming to reach Indonesia Emas, meaning that the GNP per capita will be qualified as the high-income countries, meaning that our economy need to grow by at least 7 to 8% per year. Where this national economic growth is coming from? So this is the transmigration area can contribute in producing for the national economic growth. And I learned 4 to 5% of the national rice production, as well as for the corn production, contributed by the transmigration area, which is very good. It's a good start. So we need to expand more contribution from the agriculture area, especially, as I mentioned, that it is very important to the country. First, the total factor productivity, how efficiently we use land, labor, capital, technology, and institution. Second, the capital efficiency. So I believe reflected by the incremental capital output ratio. The challenge is not simply to attract more investment, but to ensure that every rupiah of investment generates more output. And the third is the economic sophistication. So meaning that is higher local value added. So the third is producing some, not only crude palm oil, but we need to have some processing process in the area. So meaning that adding with the value added, including for the corn and so on. Next slide, please. This is important because building a factory alone does not create an industrial cluster. Many industrialization programs fall because one or more critical links are missing. We may not have enough feedstock. Productivity may not be too low, maybe too low. Electricity or water supply may be unreliable. Technical skills may be insufficient. Financing may not be available, or there may simply be no reliable buyer. So we are not shopping only how to produce it, but importantly is also how to market it, or as the off-taker. Therefore, before constructing industrial capacity, we need to ensure that the entire ecosystem can function. Next slide, please. Investors, therefore, need certainty before promotion. They need the land certainty, they need the feedstock certainty, logistic and energy reliability, capable workers, regulatory predictability, as well as market viability. We should move from promoting potential to preparing investment-ready opportunities. Next slide, please. This leads us to the meaning of downstreaming. We should distinguish between shallow downstreaming and productive downstreaming. Shallow downstreaming may simply add one processing step with low technology, limited supplies, low margin, and relatively few local jobs, while productive downstreaming goes much deeper. It creates manufacturing capability supported by research and development, branding, supplier networks, logistics services, higher skilled employment, and integration with domestic and global markets. So that's why Ministry of Transmigration need to be supported by the other line ministry for infrastructure support. The objective is therefore not merely to process commodities, it is to capture more value locally and bring the products to the nationwide and global market. Next slide, please. The next point is critical. Indonesia transmigration area not homogeneous. They differ significantly in infrastructure, market access, and industrial readiness. We are dealing with more than 600 area in total for the area, as well as with the 45 national priority zones. And they are so diverse, including also 100 tourism locations in the transmigration area. Their economic starting point vary enormously. Some already have functioning market and infrastructure. Others still struggle with basic connectivity, utilities, productivity, and institution. This means that uniform development model will not work. So, next slide, please. I therefore propose 3 broad development pathways. The first is foundation building, where the priority of infrastructure, land certainty, productivity, and basic institution. The second is cluster building, where the production base exists, but processing, logistic, finance, technology, and market remains fragmented. And the third is investment ready, where the area already has sufficient scale and capability to attract major private investment and deeper downstreaming. Different starting points require different policy packages. In other words, no one policy does not fit all. And now goes to the next slide. The important concept here is graduation. An area should move from foundation building to cluster building, then to investment readiness, and eventually toward a competitive economic clusters. Government intervention should therefore change as the area matures. We should not keep providing basic assistance to an area that is already commercially viable. And we should not push large industrial projects into areas where the economic foundation is still weak. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the economic architecture as well as the ovulation of the transmigration cluster. We begin with the local resource base, not only agriculture, but also plantation, fisheries, mineral, tourism, creative industries, as well as also services. Then we add a productivity layer, mechanization, applied technology, digitalization, and skilled workers. After that comes processing and industry steps. But industry alone is not sufficient. We need a local ecosystem of small, micro, small, and medium enterprises, suppliers, logistic providers, maintenance companies, financial institutions, and service businesses. Finally, the cluster must connect to national and global market. This is how local resources become competitive economic capabilities. Next slide, please. To make this operational, every priority project should pass a simple investment readiness test. Is the land clear? Is feedstock available? Are utilities and logistics competitive? Do we have skills and regulatory certainty? And most importantly, is there a credible market and off-taker? Only when these conditions are sufficiently clear should we aggressively promote the project to investors. Next slide, please. No single institution can deliver this transformation. Government provide the enabling environment, land, regulation, infrastructure, and coordination. Businesses, universities, as also previously speakers has already mentioned, it is very critical. So perhaps the university nearby to the closest transmigration area need to be also collaborated. As well as also the collaboration without the business model is just a meeting. These actors must come together around an investable value chain. In other words, multi-stakeholder collaboration needs an economic architecture. Next slide, please. In the last 4 minutes, I'd like to mention on the 5 strategic actions. I would like to simplify implementation to 5 actions. First, select 2 or 3 priority value chains per area because it's going to be more focused. Then diagnose the productivity and value chain bottlenecks. Next, prepare credible investment-ready projects with business model and off-takers. Then connect them to national supply chains, FTA markets, and where relevant global value chains. And finally, measure outcomes, not merely activity. These 5 actions can translate high-level strategy into field-level result. Next slide. Ultimately, I would like to suggest a slightly different concept. Transmigration area should become productivity zone, not merely production zones. A production zone asks, what can we produce here? A productivity zone asks, how can we continuously create more value from land, people, capital, technology, and local knowledge? This shifts attention from volume to capability, and capability is what eventually produces sustainable competitiveness and higher incomes. Next slide, please. The ministry has already the building block through the 5T program, which is very, very good. So, 2 of these 5T is Transkarya Nusantara, Nusa becomes the engine of industrialization, downstreaming, jobs, and market integration. And Trans Gotong Royong provide the cross-ministerial and multi-stakeholder delivery mechanism. My suggestion is that this should not be seen as 5 separate administrative programs. They should operate as one integrated economic transformation system. Next slide, please. Transkarya Nusa can therefore become much more than industrialization program. It can become a cluster development framework. Start with commodity and service identification, raise productivity through mechanization, develop processing capability, strengthen infrastructure and research and development, build and micro and small medium enterprises, supplier network, and secure market integration. This is how local farmers, cooperative, UMKM, and workers become active participants in industrialization rather than simply supplies of raw materials. In other words, Transkarya Nusa should build ecosystem, not isolated factories. Next slide, please. There is another important change in mindset, move from production first to market first. Too often we produce something and only afterwards ask who will buy it. Market first approach reverse this sequence. We begin with the demand. What does the customer need? What the quality is needed? What standard or certification is required? What volume at what price? Then we design the technology, production system, feedstock, and so on and so on. Next slide, please. Just go to the next slide because for the time interest. Let me summarize the major findings. First, transmigration should attract people and investment through economic opportunity and productivity. Second, policy cannot fit all 100 for all the transmigration area. Third, downstreaming need logistic, finance, research and development, skills, and markets. Fourth, local economy must connect national and global supply chains. And move to the last slide, recommendation. I think just last slide. Nice, this one. Let me close with two propositions. First, the success of transmigration should ultimately be measured not by how many people are moved or even by how many factories are built, but by how much productivity, entrepreneurship, local value added, and sustainable prosperity are created for the people who live there. Second, ministry should become the institution that turns fragmented sectoral intervention into one integrated economic transformation strategy for each transmigration area. Therefore, I would like to focus our scorecard on 4 outcomes: higher productivity, higher local value added, stronger market integration, and higher real household income with quality employment. If these 4 indicators improve, we can confidently say the transmigration is contributing not only to regional development, but also to Indonesia broader economic transformation. Thank you very much for your attention. Look forward to our discussion.
Thank you
Terima
very
kasih.
much, Mr. Rizal, for the presentation. We've learned about how to build investment-ready economic zone. Mr. Rizal has explained about the tactic, how to create investment-ready economic zones. I also intrigued to know more about how to collaborate with another institution, which currently we are facing a problem with regulation from different stakeholders and different minister. But we're gonna discuss about that later. We're gonna move on to the next speaker for this session, which is Mr. Yoga Afandi. Berikan tepuk tangan untuk Mr. Yoga Afandi. The time is yours, 20 minutes from now on. Silakan Bapak.
Okay, thank you, Safinas. Excellency, Pak Menteri Iftitah Sulaiman Suryanegara, distinguished panelists, Professor Arif, Pak Rizal Lukman Afandi, and Professor Soner. And also, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me. It is truly an honor for me to be here, to be among the distinguished panelists. So the topic is very timely, and I read the transformation material from the Ministry of Transmigration. It is very interesting. So I welcome the proposal, and I also support the proposal. But let me discuss this from the perspective where I work, Pak, from Central Bank, from Bank Indonesia. But I will also like to say that Indonesia is a sleeping giant. We have a very enormous potential. We have a very high potential. But I believe I should say that once it is fully mobilized, that its impact will be very immense. We can start with renewable energy to digital transformation, agriculture to advanced manufacturing, mineral reserves to marine biodiversity. So I think there should be immense potential for Indonesia to be a wake-up giant. Let me discuss this with my presentation. So begin with the idea is that this topic is actually how to build the new engine of regional growth. I think this is basically the idea that from the central bank's perspective is very timely. So let me discuss this first with the issues. So I will talk about the potential, how to build the new engine of regional growth, and then we will discuss about the findings, and I will close this with what is the relevant from the Bank Indonesia's policy. I should propose like a 5 policy, and then I will conclude with the key takeaways. First, let's go to the untapped export potential. Next slide, please, in slide 4. So if you look at the chart that I have 4 charts here, very interesting. If you look at the share of medium and high-tech manufacture export, it is very clear that Indonesia, you can see in the red bar in the left chart, Indonesia is a very limited sophistication of manufacture export compared to other countries. It remains below most regional peers. So in 2021, there is no much different from 2010. And if you look other countries like Vietnam, it represents here VNM, and also if you look Singapore or even Philippines, our neighbors, they grew quite significant. So this is actually the challenge that we should have, the share of medium and high-tech manufacture export. And I should encourage that if you have like a transmigration policy, maybe this is the way that we would like to look forward in the future. And the second chart that I have is the low integration into global value chains. So Indonesian export remains below ASEAN and OECD averages, so suggesting relatively limited participation in cross-border production network. So if you want to build a factory in the transmigration area, then it should be connected into this global value chain. You look at the chart in terms of the percent of gross export. The red chart is Indonesia, the other is ASEAN, G20 and OECD. Clearly Indonesia is below the average. In fact, it's quite worrying. The chart is declining the recent years. So in terms of the limited participation of Indonesian firms in global market, it is also shown by the chart. This is coming from the OECD Indonesian Economic Survey, November in 2024. Only a small share of Indonesian firms exports directly, significantly below the East Asia Pacific and upper middle income benchmark. You can see in the third chart. And the last chart is the exporting firms by size. You can see that small and medium-sized firms have particularly limited direct export participation and use of foreign inputs, so constraining their integration into these international supply chains. So my point is that many transmigration areas possess abundant natural resources and leading commodities. So however, fragmented production, limited downstream processing, and weak market linkages constrain their potential to generate higher value added and to access global markets. Next slide, please. So in terms of the foreign direct investment, we see that we have the momentum. There has been a strong regional FDI momentum in Asia and also in Indonesia. If you look at the recent data, collected data in 2024, it grew by 8%. So this is actually highlights a favorable regional opportunity for Indonesia to capture investment arising from global supply chain reconfiguration. And Indonesia also continues to attract FDI, but also it is warned that further potential remains. I have this chart, and because in the interest of time, so I will move very quickly. Let me move to the findings that I would like to elaborate. First, about food downstreaming, because this is one of the key programs that has been promoted by the government. So the food downstreaming is actually many benefits of it. So the transmigration area actually can be one of the center of the food downstreaming. From the perspective of the central bank, it can also contribute to maintaining price stability and food availability. It can also support the labor absorption, boosting export, increasing added value, also boosting the regional economy. And because Bank Indonesia's mandate is to stabilize the price, the inflation is our mandate. So the volatile food inflation, which is contributed like 18 to 20% of our CPI, is significant. So this is where I think the transmigration area can also have the contribution to contribute to stabilize the volatile food inflation. But also we realize there are many downstreaming challenges, as also has been discussed in the paper that I received from the invitation. Let me now move into the second topic, which is the mineral, also the food downstreaming. what is the role of Bank Indonesia in downstreaming. First, probably we can also this approach of transformation in transmigration. We can have this contribution in macroeconomic and financial stability, in terms of the monetary policy, in terms of we can also contribute by encouraging bank credit to financing, especially in priority sectors for growth and also job creation. We have a macroprudential policy, which called is the KLM. I will summarize this into the finance area later in the conclusion. We also contribute. We can contribute also in terms of deepening the financial market, which is to developing the foreign exchange market and money market into this facilitating the investment through one of the example is to provide the hedging instrument to the market. And then we can also acceleration of payment digitalization and management of investor perception and rating through our investor relation unit, as well as to connecting using the payment system in the remote area. And the last one is on the food downstreaming. Food downstreaming again can be contributed to inflation management team, because we believe that through this stabilization inflation, Ministry of Transmigration can also contribute to how the transmigration area can contribute to stabilize the volatile food inflation. So a lot of central banks area that can be cooperating between Bank Indonesia and also Ministry of Transmigration. My third issue is probably with regard to the next slide is, this is about the free trade agreement. As you know that the central government, the government is very active in introducing and in signing and implementing the free trade agreement. So this is a very good opportunity to expand market access, to reduce the tariff barriers, to integrating Indonesia, like I said earlier, into the global value chain, to diversify the export, and also to be the catalyst of structural reform. So a lot of PTA, FTA, CIPA has already been implemented. So this is the area that can actually be a demand for the industry that will be built around in transmigration area. So let me now move into the part 3, the third part of the relevant Bank Indonesia policy. First is the policy number 1 is to synergy for inflation management team. We have the framework to strengthen economic structure and efficiency by achieving the inflation target on the path to develop Indonesia. So there are 4 approaches there. First is to maintain the price affordability, to supply availability for smooth distribution, as well as to have this effective communication. There are a lot to be discussed with the regional government. So we have the national inflation management team, not only within the central government, but also using our regional offices, all around 46 offices in Indonesia. So we can have this cooperation in order to have this target, which is to stabilize the inflation. Because as you are all aware, that without stabilization, without inflation stable, we cannot have high growth. We cannot have sustainable growth. So this is very important, and this is our mandate. And we believe that I think with cooperation with central government, with regional government, with many institutions, we believe that we can achieve that. And I welcome the transformation from the Ministry of Transmigration, because with that also will contribute to the significant volatile food inflation. So this is actually the framework that we can offer, and we can discuss and elaborate further about this. Policy number 2 is the IRU, RIRU, and GIRU. IRU stands for Investor Relation Unit. You can see in the blue line, blue chart, blue panel. And RIRU is the Regional Investor Relation Unit, and GIRU is Global Investor Relation Unit. For IRU, BI, which is under my department, which is the international department, so we are as a secretary to have this relation with the investors. So if whenever they would like to have see the investor, they can go to our office, and then we can also talk to many other institutions such as Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs. It used to be with Pak Rizal, BKPM, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Trade. So we can have the strategy, coordination, and then we can have many programs with the IRU. And because Bank Indonesia have 46 regional office, we have this regional investor relation unit. So we set up this RIRU to be the supply side. And then GIRU, our offices, 5 offices, foreign representative offices all over the world, in New York, London, Beijing, Tokyo, and also Singapore. They act as a global investor relation unit. So we coordinate as a demand side. So we're connecting between the supply side and then with the demand side, and we have this coordination with the IRU, with the relevant institution in the central government, so that we can, facilitate the trade promotion, the investment activity through many programs, which is programmed by the central government. So that's policy number 2. So policy number 3, in my department, we also promoting the local currency transaction. So instead of using US dollar as the main currency, we can use the local currency. And the number of this LCT has been significant, quite high, increasing very high. China, Japan, Korea, and then we have also with Malaysia, Thailand, and UAE. We can soon, we will have with the India. So a lot of opportunities coming from the foreign countries, and we will facilitate all this transaction using trade and investment using only local currency transaction. So this is the benefit of LSCT is that we have this currency diversification of exposure. So we're not only relying on US dollar, but we can also rely on other currency. So this is what we have already been implemented by the central bank, and we already cooperated with also many ministries and many institutions in Indonesia, and we hope that this LCT can also be one of the program that can be supported by the Transmigration transformation policy by the Ministry of Transmigration. The 4th one is about the macroprudential policy. So the macroprudential policy to support priority sector financing. So the idea is that as the central bank, we can have the incentive for the bank to finance the priority project promoted by the central government. So for example, the Ministry of Transmigration have this priority sector, then we can, coordinate with the central government, with Ministry of Finance, as well as with the central bank, that we can have this discussion about what kind of the priority that needs to be financed, and we can have this incentive for the macroprudential. The last policy is about connection, because we believe, I think, without inclusivity, there will be no growth in Indonesia. So I think with the MSME, we know that the focus is to have this medium, small, middle enterprises onboarding, so we can have this inclusivity in order to have the sustainable growth, not only felt by the upper class, but also low and middle income class. So this is the idea, is that to have this expanding access to other digital financial services. Connectivity, we have KRIS, we have fast payment. So the small medium enterprises, they can directly have this connection with this BIFAS, with the KRIS, so they can have financing already if they have transaction in their economic transaction. So that is actually the 5 policy that can be promoted and supported to this transformation policy. So in conclusion, the key takeaways is that from perspective of the central bank, I have 3 key takeaways. First, I think this is the mandate from the central bank is to stabilize. So I think the transmigration areas can support the price stability as new production center, strengthening food supply, improving interregional distribution, in synergy with the inflation management team. So the idea is this, to help us, to coordinate with us to safeguard the price. That will also contribute to the financial system stability as well as the payment system stability. That will create a resilient foundation for new economic growth centers, which is the idea have to have this transmigration policy. Second is what we can do is to forward the financing, to mobilize productive financing and private capital to transform regional potential into bankable, investment-ready economic activities. Because we, as the central bank, can provide the macro-prudential incentive, including to the MSME, to agriculture, to downstreaming policy, as well as to cooperative financing. And in terms of the financing, we can also we have already facilitate of local currency transition, which is to facilitate the trade and investment. This will also help us to stabilize the currency because it will reduce the FX costs and the currency risk. And my third point is to connect local production, finance, and businesses to national and global markets through integrated value chains and digital ecosystem. We already have setting up the institution, which is the IRU, RIRU, and GIRU, as explained before. I believe that with this, we can strengthen the market access and also global connectivity to export promotion facilitation, curation, and also business matching. And in terms of digital connection, we already have, the central bank have already facilitate of this CRIS, digital payment. So we believe with this, I think we can also contribute to increase the regional connectivity. I think that is, for me, the idea is that we have to stabilize, we can help the finance, and also we can also have help with the connection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yoga, for the presentation. That central bank, Bank Indonesia could help with, need help to stabilize, and will do stabilize, and then could help with finance and connect. And then also there was few policy recommendation that we're going to discuss more about that, because I'm want to know about what's the impact if those policies are applied very well. And moving on to the next presentation from Mr. Arif Anshori Yusuf. Pak Anshori, 20 minutes from now on. Please give a big round of applause to Bapak Arif.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Please allow me to stand up. Is that okay? Because I'm always nervous when I'm sitting, especially in front of Pak Menteri, Pak. So maybe just the next slide, please. Maybe you can just page up, page down. Okay, so I'm going to start with the notion that if you want a true growth, what I mean by true growth is a growth spell. Growth spell is high growth that can be sustained for a long time. I think there's no debate that it should be coming not necessarily from investment or capital, but should come from productivity increase. And then in relation to this topic, I think we can naturally distinguish what drives the productivity growth. In this context is labor productivity growth. So we can decompose productivity growth into two components. First is what we call within productivity growth. So it means the technological advance that's coming within one certain sector, right? Technological innovation in that sectors. But there are other ways, which is the productivity shock because, the productivity increase because people move sectors from lower productivity sector to higher productivity sectors. And that's what we call structural change between sectors. So if we look at the history of some countries, we can see from here that the era of the high productivity growth coming from structural change has been in the past. So if you see the picture here, you have a period of Indonesia, for example, here in 1990 to 96, before the financial crisis, our productivity growth is 5.1% per year. So, and or more than half of it coming from structural transformations. You move labor from low productivity sectors to higher productivity sectors. But more recently, let's say from the last 20 years or so, that number slowing down. In these peer countries, most of them the same, but except for India. So this is slowing down of productivity growth coming from structural change. Okay. Now let's see these figures. So this is the GDP per capita in constant 2015 dollars, and this is the share of primary sector excluding mining. And if you notice, there is a this yellow dots here. The yellow dot are countries, the most recent data, countries, cross-country data. And this is the path of what Indonesia has been gone through since 1960. You grow your income, you lower your share of agriculture. Okay? So, as you can see, that's clearly that if you want to be a rich country, if you believe this picture, there are only 2 countries here where they have significant portions of agriculture, and that's for a tiny country. I think one of them is Greenland. Yeah. So if you want to be rich, you have to live agriculture. Sorry, I'm not saying that explicitly, but the share of agriculture in the economy should be shrinking. And that's what happened to Indonesia. But what I want you to focus here is province. Overlay of this Indonesian history and overlay across this country today. Okay? I think from my point of view, the message is that the variations, the heterogeneity of an economic structure of Indonesian province is quite similar, almost similar to the cross country today, right? So for example, you can have Jakarta, I think similar to Belgium, where you have almost zero agriculture share, right? Or Capri here. But there are so many provinces where the share of agriculture, like Aceh, for example, is even higher than Indonesia in 1970. Why I want to say this? Because transformation not necessarily has to be nationwide. Indonesia has been successfully managed the transformation from here to here, right? With a success. It means if we focus on region, we can still do the same if we focus on regions. So the productivity change coming from structural transformation is still possible, and we still have opportunity to do that if we focus in regions. So we still have hopes of having high growth from structural transformations, but we have to look spatially within province. That's my message from this picture. Next, please. However, this is a challenge. This is again, certain regions, like this is the world, this is China, this is Indonesia, this is lower middle income country, this is East Asia Pacific and developing economy. What's the message? Deindustrialization. This is the share of manufacturing in value added. And the not so good story is it's happened in Indonesian province too. Look at 2 most industrialized province, West Java and Banten. Their manufacturing are shrinking. Even Kaltim, Sumut, shrinking. Except the two phenomenal province, which is Sulteng and Malut. And you know why, right? You know why. Downstreaming of nickel in Morowali and Maluku Utara. You can see the phenomenal point where in just certain period of time, they can increase, let's say Sulteng, from less than 10% of manufacturing share to 40% of manufacturing share. Is that a success story? If you want to talk about in terms of growth, yes, indeed. Yeah, but hold on, we shouldn't measure success of development from growth alone. Let's see others. Next. Not so much. Because if you see here, Sulawesi Tengah, around 2019, their income per capita has surpassed the national average. But the poverty, no. Okay, so we have to do something else if we want to create a meaningful downstreaming strategies, right? Okay, this is just for you to note. Next, please. And there are other challenges. This is rather new. Because if you want to industrialize, why people so love of industrialization? Because your demand is not sealed. There is no ceiling to your demand. If you increase agriculture, there is ceiling on your demand, right? Because people eat food, if you have a limited amount of food you can eat, right? But if you if you produce manufacture, you can sell to other country, other regions. So trade is important if you want to industrialize. That's how China grow. That's how we grow in 1990s, right? So the global economy has to be favorable to industrializations. And now, no, not like that anymore. Look at this, slow globalizations. The increase in the world trade stopped after 2008, and trade protection are rising. Why? Well, there are debates about what the cause of this, but it is easy to pin down to this. Since 1980, the far-right vote share in Europe increased from 1.7% to 13%. And this is today share of the parliament seat in certain European country. In Austria, 31% of parliament seat far-right parties. Why I say this? Because this ideology shape anti-immigration, slow down trade. If you expect Donald Trump will be gone in 3 years' time because he won't be re-elected anymore, I think that's not what I'm seeing. Because if you look at this trend, if Donald Trump will not going to be re-elected, there will be more Donald Trump-like figures that can replace him just like that. So, take this as a challenge. So we have global economy that is not favorable to industrialize. Next, please. Okay, now let's go to before this. So what is our strategy? I think the strategy, having these challenges, I think we should be not just focused in certain sector or industry. Because the industrialization is happening everywhere, so maybe we should not to focus on leading sector. Stiglitz called this multi-pronged strategy. So multi-pronged strategy means you move everything together. And it especially work where we have comparative advantage in materials. I have two studies that I want to share. I commissioned 2 studies for Bank Indonesia. Bank Indonesia actually commissioned 2 studies. So we did it. We did a study to find a growth strategy for 2 regions. One is Aceh, and one is different characteristic region, which is Kepri. It's different. One is still agricultural based, and the other one is very manufacturing based. But those 2 regions are facing the same issues. So in Aceh, what we did is, why don't we try to do several scenarios to close the 1% growth gap of Aceh in relation, compared to national growth average. Aceh has been 4% annual growth compared to 5% annual growth nationwide. So what does it take to have Aceh gain another 1% growth? What strategy can we do it? So we use a computable general remodeling dynamic model to do this. And then there are certain lessons from this exercise. So basically, you can still increase productivity of agriculture. It can add up more 0.56%. However, something crucial here. You cannot just move agriculture. You have to create demand for it by agro-processing capacity. It's just one example. Okay? And then the other one is, you can always don't neglect the service sectors. Because service sector is now undeniably the source of where labor move to. So we have to accompany with certain policy to increase the human capital that coming into the service sector. So service sector can be modernized. And this combined strategy can be achieved to achieve 1% growth. But the key is all sector has to move together. Next. Kepri is this different aspect. So Kepri is manufacturing based, Pulau Batam, right? So what we did here is, okay, let's invest in their key sectors, which is electronics. Like invest certain trillion rupiah in electronics, amount that enough to achieve another 0.5% growth. But that's the baseline. Now, what if we use the same amount of money to invest in other sectors? Can it achieve the same growth gain? Well, no. Why? Because the infrastructure of the economy, the structure of the economy has been so mature to support that industry. So if you invest the same amount of money to financial service, you only increase 0.40%. If you increase in digital and ICT sector, 0.1%. If you increase in fishery the same amount of money, you increase by 0.32%. However, to me, this is, I don't know in English, cincai. Cincai. Cincai mean, oh, not that bad. Not that bad. If we add more extra policies, let's say increase domestic demand and export. So this export, so the establishment of international financial institutions in Kepri, like EFC in Kepri. So this financial service can be exported. Okay, so that's enough to match what we can get from electronic manufacturing. If we also increase export of digitalization, of digital industry, how? We export data center. Data center export. Invest in data center, then you can have it. Fishery is a bit hard because you have a bigger gap that you fill by promoting exports and maybe creating some more processing, but it's attainable. Okay. Next, maybe I will be just closing. So again, my lessons from this is I never believe of football commentator who say that the best defense is offense. Gak percaya saya Pak, karena yang menang pasti yang defense itu. Yang offense pasti kalah. Nah, Indonesia now has been, Indonesia now, we have offensive force from the global economy. So what should we do? Should we offense too? Seperti yang diminta komentator? No. I think we should do what Germany do to win the World Cup. Defensive, but find a little bit opportunity sometime to counterattack. Yeah. So how? Strengthening the domestic economy. Indonesian economy is so big, 280 million people, so big. We have to strengthen that. We are not Singapore, we are not Hong Kong. Come on, strengthening domestic economy, but form new partnership globally. I'm sure there are many like-minded diplomacy from other country that we can share values and things. So how can we do this? How can we do this strategy? So I summarize, at least there are 4 that we can do. Next. Okay. And where transmigration can be placed on it. Okay. So the first thing is mobility dividend. Indonesia has 280 million people, but we should build a strong middle class out of it. How? Through social mobility. How? Social mobility. Social mobility. Jangan sampai orang pinter karena destilnya berubah nggak bisa kuliah. That's how social mobility. Social mobility. Yeah? You have to give almost equal opportunity for everybody to be educated. For example, that's social mobility. Because that's the only way we can have strong middle class. That's first. And then I skip to third. The one is the digital leap. Digital leap. Leverage digital technology for inclusive productivity. Indonesia has been the latecomer in digitalization compared to Thailand, Singapore. But look, I'm an IT enthusiast. I really know that the advancements, the growth of the IT, the speed of the internet, the speed of the processor has been exponentially increasing, right? So if you late, actually, we are tapping the most advanced, the most frontier technology. Jadi telat ada manfaatnya juga sih kalau IT gitu. Yeah? So that's step. The second one, the third one, the last one is reformasi 2.0. Indonesia, so in my short word, growth can only come from innovation, but people cannot innovate if he has to compete with rent seeking. That's it. If you have 1 trillion rupiah, should we invest in rent seeking or should we invest in innovation? Well, it's no-brainer, invest in rent seeking. Put the money somewhere until KPK found it, for example. That's rent seeking. So we have to fix our institutions until innovation and rent seeking can have a fair game to compete. If we don't do that, no way we can innovate. No way. So that's a precondition. Now come to the strategic shift. Strategic shift is relocate resource across sector because we still have opportunity for doing it to raise economic productivity. And in strategic shift, actually I have 3 kind of strategy. The first is what I call strategic agriculture transformation. The other, maybe we can discuss later, but I want to focus on strategic agricultural transformations because it is the most relevant to this ministry. Next, please. This is my last slide.
Sorry, but we would like to remind you our time is up.
Last slide.
Okay.
So there are 4 pillars. of strategic agricultural transformation. First is reducing the urban burden, de-urbanization. I have house in Ciamis because I can use in the home, for example, and I can work from village. Talent can come back to rural areas. So this is reducing urban burden at the same time, right? Because pollution and things like that. And two, don't narrow the definition of agriculture into planting something, right? No, not just growing things, but also manufacture it. So off-farm rural activity has to be strengthened. And third is leverage digital technology, drone and things like that. And the last one is, of course, this is also precondition, modernizing and mechanizing agriculture. So let's people come back to rural area or peri-urban areas. Yeah? And then key policy instrument for that, I think, is we have to equalize access to quality education and technology to rural area. School has to have internet access. Improving nutrition, yeah, including MBG, you can bully me later. And expanding access to quality healthcare in rural area. And also, I think we should establish something called special rural economic zones. Maybe that's such a good idea, I don't know. Then that's where transmigration policy can contribute to these visions. That's for me, thank you.
Thank you very much. Berikan tepuk tangan, terima kasih banyak for the last co-panelist. And then now we move to the main panelist, Mr. Soner. Please welcome Mr. Soner. Give a big round of applause to Mr. Soner.
Sir Arif and present in the while standing. Okay. So thank you so much again, Mr. Minister, dear panelists and distinguished guests. So I think you are loading the slides. Since in my earlier lecture, the long lecture, I talked about different elements, in particular, for example, how the transmigration areas can be taught as part of bigger links into global value chains or free trade zones. I took this presentation more along the lines of what we were asked. What type of downstreaming strategies there may be, especially considering the commodities. Okay, so again, I'm taking the question from a narrow perspective of the CAT and the transmigration policy, but I do appreciate Dr. Yoga Efendi, Professor Arif, they also gave important perspectives about the macro-financial framework, especially Bank Indonesia, or the growth and productivity challenges. But let me, as I said, step back and take the question through the lens of the CAT and how they may be reflecting as an ecosystem for improving the market or the marketability of the natural resources and the commodities. So I think the first thing is, again, thinking through a scoreboard through which we say which activities do we want to promote? Which downstream stages do we want to engage in? Because, again, as I will mention later, it depends on the activity itself, as well as things related to the skills, proximity, logistics, or different things. And then, what type of services? Are we just thinking through the manufacturing industry, or are we going to think through the ripple effects, where we can be also talking about better and wider logistics, or finance certification, or other elements? Because in a sense, if we are thinking about downstreaming the commodities, then in a sense we are also thinking about making our product more integrated to the market, and in particular, thinking through maybe accessing new finance networks or making sure that our good is compliant with wider market accessibility. Of course, which type of firms do we want to engage with? And also, what type of collaborations do we want to engage with? And this is the again, growing, the key part of the transmigration. We need to make sure that at the end of the day, in order to achieve this ecosystem, we need to have a clear, stable, and in a sense, multidimensional interactions between government, private sector, individuals, local stakeholders, migrants, universities, all those things. But if we are thinking about the commodity, let me, actually maybe I'm repeating the obvious, because if we are looking at the recent developments, especially both through the objectives of the programs and the bigger picture, for example, about the nickel market, commodity is just a starting point. Of course, in the past, especially when there was a quick windfall of extracting and exporting commodities, maybe the one of the quick ways of addressing the market needs might have been exporting the commodity as a raw material. But if we are thinking about both increasing the value added and also thinking about having a more sustainable ecosystem, then the commodity itself, or the endowment, let me say more generally, is just the starting point. And we know that it can't be part of the development strategy. Professor Arif mentioned very importantly, emphasizing the importance of the total factor productivity. And actually, one of the emphasis he made was, okay, maybe the exports are growing, but if we want to strip out the price movements from the quantity, are we going to conclude that it increases because of the higher prices for nickels, or are we more productive? So therefore, we should always keep in mind, especially when integrating the commodities into a wider market, we should be looking for the ways to extract the highest value added. And for that thing, of course, we start by thinking about the endowments of the economy. But those endowments, how can it be merged with the capabilities, which includes the skills, firms, infrastructures? How can we make sure that different processings and the logistics can increase the value added? Of course, how can we make sure that we have stable access to markets, not only making sure that our product is sold at a, let me say, a higher markup, but at the same time, making sure that there is the diversification across different buyers. You don't depend only on one market. And finally, how can we think through the ecosystem? This is the key themes of the transmigration, through which there would be spillovers, not only in terms of new skills, new firms, higher wages, but also the new supply chains. But but the regional transformation will require all of these things. And for that thing, actually, if we are thinking about a particular commodity, and later I'll be talking about fisheries, and not a commodity, but tourism sector as also something that depends on the natural endowments of the economy, we should be starting with certain scorecards. And it would be who buys it, at what specification, what price. Because especially if we are talking about food, we need to be mindful about, typically we are talking about a non-tradable good, which can be converted into a tradable good only through maybe certain packages or certain compliance with the standards. Then what is the productivity? Are we going to produce it at a competitive price, or in an amount that will be bringing a necessary amount of revenues? Of course, it is going to be reflected, flourishing the local firms, local skills. And are we going to be able to have a wider value chains around it? For example, if it is about fisheries, are we going to be able to also build a packaging or cold storage industry around it? So all these things need to be considered. But at the same time, we are talking about food. And there is the famous word, we didn't inherit the world from our parents. We owe to our kids. And also with the ever-pressing issues about the climate change sustainability, we need to make sure that we are doing all these transformations in the marketing without any detriment on the land quality, water quality, or any degradation. This is not only a requirement by the market, especially if you want to export to certain markets, but it's our ethical responsibility. And finally, we need to be thinking about the resilience to various shocks. And those shocks include climate change. Those shocks include volatility of the prices, because when we are in the commodity domain, whatever value that you want to add, still your prices will be volatile than the, let's say, manufacturing industry goods which have more sophistication. And finally, the geopolitics. So, if I just take the fisheries just as a conceptualizing example, we know that Indonesia is famous for high-quality tuna, and in particular, there is the strong demand for Indonesian tuna by certain markets, including Japan. And there's already a very stable trade between Japan and Indonesia. But why not to carry this trade to wider geographies, wider markets? Why not to make sure that your markets are diversified, or with the same product, you get more out of it? And that thing will be requiring, I think, a food value chain which can entail cold storage, transports, logistics, processing, those things. But the key thing is, if we are to make more competitive industry around the commodities, we need to be thinking about it as an ecosystem where that activity will be feeding to the other parts of the supply chain. Another thing is the tourism, and if we look at the Labuan Bajo, again, it's a place favorite for the tourists, but one part of the income generated for the entire region is coming from the fact that the tourism program also allowed for the flourishing of the local value chains, both in terms of services and things like food industry or souvenirs, things like that. So when we are thinking about, again, a certain ecosystem, part of these special economic zones, then we should be thinking about the broader implication of that thing in the local economy. So, therefore, depending on how we establish an ecosystem around these things, we may be thinking about much higher growth effect of these things. For example, we may be talking about a higher logistics logistics sector engagement, or we may be talking about higher business service engagement. We may be thinking about, especially considering the dispersed natural structure of the economy, and Dr. Öge Efendi talked about the, and I had been close follower of Bank Indonesia, not maybe that recently. When I was at the central bank, we were exchanging many ideas, but digital payment systems and all these things are part of the market enablers here. Again, finance, especially the selective finance for the productive activities, or more importantly, the public good of maintaining the financial stability. Skills which involve not only contributing to the production, but also becoming self-enforcing accumulation rule, especially through the vocational trainings and educations. And again, when we talk about other extra spillovers, regional spillovers, again, we can talk about the tourism and such things. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is, if we are thinking about making use of the commodities as part of the downstreaming, we need to make sure, or we need to be talking through what type of other services, logistics, digital services, different things that we can build around it, so that first there is more backward spillovers are achieved, but at the same time, more value added obtained out of the particular activity of interest. However, the first thing that we keep in mind has to be, where is the market? In particular, we need to have another scorecard where we would be thinking about identifying the buyers, measuring the gap. In particular, if we are talking about, let's say, agro-food industry, the differences between the standards of the importer and our standards of production. And we need to be thinking about having a higher agglomeration and amplifier multiplier effect through supplier development, logistics, and such things. And finally, we need to make sure that, okay, on one side, we may be thinking that, okay, we are slightly moving away from pure low value added commodity exportation towards something with value added, but we should not be forgetting the fact that this should also serve as a tool for us to differentiate both the products, maybe at the 3-digit, 4-digit level, but the market destinations. As I said, once there is a sustainable, good sustainable agro-fish industry, why not to move to the untapped markets? And why to continue to stick to certain markets as it used to be? Again, when we are talking about the downstream, again, since the morning, one of my key messages was different regions, different activities, different industries, they all require different types of treatment to the problem. For example, in some certain areas, maybe the local is the key problem. In some areas, maybe the carrier may be the key problem. Here, again, when we are talking about the downstreaming based on the existing commodities, of course, we need to be mindful of each of the areas will require different type of bottlenecks, different type of complementary economic activities, and this will require, again, one of the key messages since the morning, close cooperation between different industries, different ministries. Different ministries. Of course, we need to have, again, the collaboration architecture that we've been talking about since the morning. First of all, starting with diagnosis of the capacities of the cat at the smallest delivery unit, but then thinking about what anchor firms, what buyers are in the market, so that we would be adapting the standards of our products accordingly. Of course, there should be a very close collaboration with the universities. For this very case, collaboration at the specific knowledge level. For example, agro engineering departments closely collaborating with the local stakeholders about what can be produced, how can be produced, what type of marketing things can be produced. And as you know, when you are talking about the agro-food industry, there's always the main good, but there are also many side products. I mean, people even make use of the peels or different things of these things. Therefore, there's a close collaboration with the industries. Of course, finance is very important, and especially due to the gaps between the delivery and payments, we need to have reliable payment systems. We need to have access to the working capital. Again, infrastructure standards, these are very, very important, especially if we are talking about trying to bring some agro-food product into a global value chains. We need to make sure both within country and across country value infrastructure is allowing for that. And finally, again, this is where the program local matters. We need to make sure that we have the common understanding, common support, common goal of shared prosperity of the local communities, because at the end of the day, those local communities may be coming, just as I said, I borrowed these lands not from my parents, but from my children. Yes, I am your stakeholder. We are working for the shared prosperity of the country. But just as the challenges in Brazil, the local communities may say, look, we need to make sure that we follow certain environmental standards. So these are all the decisions that require close cooperation and collaboration at different levels, the last one being at the local level. Therefore, the flagship programs, going back to maybe my early 66-page presentation, are really addressing important bottlenecks and mapping these bottlenecks into what can be the solution. And since these are like the complementary flagships, the degree to which we rely on one of the flagship may differ from one industry to the other. So this is something we need to be mindful. So again, we may be thinking through some value chain scorecard, productivity, value added, market access, jobs, linkages, capability, investment, resilience. But then we need to make sure that we start with the basics. Okay, where is the market? Where is my capacity? What type of things I can produce? And then based on this thing, continue to track the outcomes and see how certain goals are achieved. Okay, so that's me. And maybe you can think of that thing as more like a complement to the morning presentation. But I'll be very happy to take questions around this downstreaming, both related to earlier presentation and this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Soner, for the presentation about how to do downstreaming wisely and perfectly, and what to analyze, what to identify for a successful downstreaming big goal that we have here in our country. So let's move on to the question and answer. I'm gonna open to sides. Okay, we have one question here. Please mention your name. Second question, and then 3 questions. Okay, perfect. We're gonna start with Miss. Could you please introduce yourself, and then what is your question?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sinta. I am a government officer from the Ministry of Transmigration, working in Yogyakarta Center for Transmigration Training and Community Empowerment. Yeah, I have just returned from the Torire Transmigration Settlement Unit in Poso Regency, Central Sulawesi, for a few days ago. We found that the community has strong local commodities, including coffee, cocoa, durian, avocado, and vegetables. However, one of the major challenges is market connectivity. Due to the distance and high logistic costs, it is difficult and expensive for farmers to bring their product to market outside the area. My question to Prof. Soner, from your perspective, what kind of collaboration and business model can effectively connect remote transmigration areas like Torire with reliable off-takers and downstream industries so that local commodities can be processed locally and generate greater economic value for the community? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you gonna answer? Yeah, okay. We're gonna answer first and then we move to the next question, yeah?
Sure.
Please.
And I can try to reflect on my personal experience as well. I'm from Antalya, which is one of the agricultural capitals, besides being the tourism capital of Turkey. And I've been also coming from a family that has been for generations producing orange. And I can really see, it used to be when I was a kid, the orange that we were producing had to go to Istanbul within 20 hours. Okay, now it's going in 10, 12 hours.
Okay.
And there are also more stable value chains. And I can just only tell you, there are huge returns to making the necessary infrastructure. Either it will, in the case of oranges, they are moved with large lorries. Of course, I mean, depending on where you are selling, what you are selling, it may be either seaport, it may be a land, but you are clearly talking about the idea of why this transmigration should be merged with close collaboration with the other ministries. In particular, the infrastructure. You are talking about an untapped market opportunity, which is just waiting for a highway, maybe. So, of course, I mean, the solution is not today, but with the coordination, with the appropriate steps, it is just, maybe days away, years away, but eventually we are talking about an opportunity that will bring huge economic potential to the region. Thank you.
Yeah. And it would lead to another question. That means we need a collaboration between several ministries. But also, we are facing the same problem, the very common problem, which is overlapping regulations sometimes. And then, then how to address that? How can we improve our collaboration with that issue?
Again, I'll be answering the question without knowing too much about the internal institutional structures of the governments or the workings of the government. However, of course, in a typical economic decision, we always think through what type of side effects is my action generating? Is it going to generate bottlenecks? Is it going to generate enabling effects? So I think one of the things, especially if the country, as one of our professors was saying, is on the way of tapping the huge potential it has not tapped already, then the red tape, such bureaucratic coordination, these are very important things also to tackle. Sure.
Thank you very much.
Can I just jump in?
Yes.
Commenting to the question raised by
Ibu Sinta. Yes.
I think, as I mentioned, we need to have a new model for inter-ministerial partnership because the Ministry of Transmigration is heavily depend on infrastructures as well as also on the connectivity. Because not only the commodity, local commodity can be produced, but more importantly, as I mentioned, is how to bring this to the national network as well as market, as well as also in the other step is to bring to the integrate to the global market. Yeah, as I think mentioned by Professor Baskaya, like fisheries from Sulawesi is very famous to produce tuna, for example. So if it is located in one of the transmigration area, then we need to select 2 or 3 commodities that can be becoming flagship or champion, and brings this to the ministerial attention.
Level.
To get the support infrastructure and so on and so on. So I think that's I think in line with our discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Rizal. Hope that's answer your question. Let's move to the next question. Boleh mikrofonnya dibantu, di-pass over. Boleh angkat tangan, Pak? Lagi, angkat tangan lagi. Nah, oke.
Check. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Fikri. I'm one of the analysts in the Directorate General of Economic Development and Community Empowerment of Transmigration. I want to ask Mr. Rizal about your presentation earlier in the stage-based development pathways from foundation to cluster and investment ready, and the strengthening of one of our flagship program, which is Transkarya Nusantara, that you presented. What concrete strategies can the Ministry of Transmigration pursuing to map and resolve the 6 missing links, particularly in feedstock certainty and off-taker availability for leading commodities in transmigration areas? Thank you.
Thank you so much. You may answer the question.
Yes, thank you. I think the big picture has been presented by Pak Yoga on how the Indonesian economy is working, especially in exporting our commodity. Our export is heavily depend on the natural resources and primary commodities, which is contribute about 45%. So it's quite big, heavily depend on those natural resources and primary commodities. Compared to like Malaysia, is only less than 20%. Vietnam is 12%. Thailand is also less than 20%. Meaning that we need to have this transforming our commodity work in the local area. So that's why I think the bringing the productivity in the region is very crucial. So downstreaming and increasing the value added is a key. I think is not only limited to the local commodity, but we need to add this value added. Moreover, of course, is the introduction of the innovation technology, bringing the value of the local commodity becoming much higher and becoming the also source of income for the local people living there. But need to be supported by the necessary logistic infrastructures to make this connected to nationwide network as well as also to the global market.
Okay, thank you so much. So Pak Arif, maybe you would like to add some answer regarding to the question? Later, okay, thank you so much. Let's move to the third question. Which one? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Yoga. My name is Hanung from the Center for Data and Information, Ministry of Transmigration. Absolutely, the first I have impressed of complexity of QRIS and development growth of QRIS. This question about support of Ministry Transmigration is how can strategies digital payment QRIS system to support economic activities for the durian market include implementation to system supply chain durian commodity.
Durian.
Yes.
Durian commodity.
I try my best. But actually, we don't call it Chris. We call it Chris, yeah. As the previous governor always promote itself, Chris. So the idea is actually, it is connectivity, Pak. Connectivity. So if you have this connectivity, then you can directly connect to this financial system, which is for the small, medium enterprises, is very helpful. For example, for durian, for example. Yeah, then somebody is buying durian from a trader, then the trader can directly benefit from the, receive the money itself. So this is actually important because that money actually can be used for another transaction that can facilitate actually economic transaction. That is the idea. And it is actually the job of the central bank to have this connectivity between the people. This is what is the CRIS role. So I'm not talking about very specific like a durian, but overall, I think the increase of the user of the CRIS is very significant. It's exponentially increased. So this is something that is reaching already the critical mass. So everybody, if they use CRIS, then everybody want to join, like a social network. So the idea is that to have this. But from the Bank Indonesia, we always want to complete the payment system infrastructure. Not only CRIS, we have also BI Fast. And then later on, we can continue into this other system. For example, now we can have also CRIS transaction, not only among the people in Indonesia, but also cross-border transaction in China, with Japan, with Korea, with Malaysia, with Thailand. So this is what we are doing. So the central bank mandate is to have this, payment system stability. One of the ideas is to introduce the CRIS so that can benefit to the inclusivity, where people can enjoy and have this facility and then benefit for the economic transaction. I think that is my answer. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you very much. Is there any other question? No? Oke, boleh berikan tepuk tangan untuk seluruh panelis. Thank you so much, Mr. Soner. Thank you so much, Pak Yoga. Terima kasih juga Pak Rizal dan juga Pak Arif. Maybe to close this discussion, I would like to hear some closing statement from each panelist. We would like to start from Mr. Soner, please.
Okay, maybe just to summarize in 2 sentences. Again, Indonesian economy has a huge potential, as we have already discovered, both through the numbers, through the discussions. And there's the huge change in the global economy, which made Indonesia more important than ever, because the world needs countries that will complement the resilient global value chains. Indonesia is one of the few. And hopefully with the right structural settings and right coordination policies, Transmigration Minister's efforts to build the special economic zones will be part of the success story of Indonesia through integrating them into the global value chains. And these goods produced as part of the special economic zones, CATs, may be part of the resilience of the global goods and services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Soner. Let's move on to Pak Yoga.
Okay, thank you. I think Indonesia, like Professor Sommer said, we have a very huge potential. We are a sleeping giant. So I think it needs to be waking up. Yeah. And because of that, new economic growth need to be done. And I welcome and support the idea from transformation policy in Transmigration Ministry. It is a very good idea to have this new economic growth. So what we can contribute from central bank is, like I said, SFC, stabilize, because this is our mandate, and no growth without stabilization, without inflation stable and currency stable. And finance. We can have this many incentive to promote the finance, and the other one is connect.
Connect,
okay.
yeah.
I think that I think basically
SFC,
the idea.
yeah?
SFC.
Stabilize, finance, and connect.
Okay,
That's how Bank Indonesia could involve in this. Thank you so much, Pak Yoga. Let's move on to Pak Rizal.
Yes, I think my humble message is addressed to the other line ministries, other than Ministry of Transmigration. We need to work in the open-minded way, not work in the silo. So let's work to support the regional development and also the community development, including Ministry of Transmigration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Rizal. Last but not least. On, okay.
Okay. Let me echo the previous closing, because that's something that I haven't said in my presentation.
Yes.
Okay. So we tend to blame something if we fail on something. And I found that in many dialogue about policies, in many dialogue about programs, there are terms that always kill conversation because we thought that's where to blame. And that word is ego sectoral, that kill conversations. right? But I think that's true. I think that's true because my experience, not my experience, my just 2 years experience helping the government, I think that's the biggest challenge. Is we have to have a power of convening different ministries, different stakeholders. And I went, so transmigration is a cross-cutting issue. It's a regional development issue. It's not just moving people. It's a regional development. Regional development is cross-cutting issue. And I hope that Ministry of Transmigration also can increase or improve their convening power to host meetings, things like that, so that can be a more have improved. That's first issue that I want to close with. But the second one is collaboration can also be between stakeholders, especially between government and private sectors. So we need to find a good balance of where government should intervene and where it shouldn't, because it may be easily be too excessive. So we just need to be careful of to find that balance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also have a conclusion that we've learned that the transformation of transmigration areas is not only about developing the land, but also creating new economic opportunities for the people by developing local communities to attracting investment so that transmigration areas can become new centers of economic growth. But the success of this transformation should be measured not only by the investment itself that comes in, but also again by the job created, income that increase, value that stays within local communities. So ultimately, we want transmigration areas to become productive, competitive, and inclusive economic region. One more time, give a big round of applause to all my panelists for second discussion. It's my pleasure, Shafinas, to be your moderator, and I'm passing over to the Master of Ceremony. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shafinas. All panelists, once more, give it up for all panelists and moderator. And as we'd like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our co-panelists and moderator, may I now invite to the stage Inspector General of the Ministry of the Transmigration, Mr. Yusef Patria, to present tokens of appreciation. Gentlemen, ladies, would you mind to take center stage as on behalf of the Ministry of Transmigration of the Republic of Indonesia, we express our heartfelt gratitude. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and perspective as we have discussed all the frameworks and thought process to make sure that Indonesia can fly high this year and beyond 2026. Again, Indonesia with the right policy can be part of the global value chain. And to our wonderful moderator, thank you so much. Let's have a quick group photo, everyone. Give your best smile to the camera for this lovely partnership. 3, 2, 1. Once more, the power of convening. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. All co-panelists and moderator, you may return to your seat, but Professor Baskaya, kindly stay on stage if we can steal 3 more minutes of your time. Professor Baskaya, as we now concluding our day, would you do the honor to share a few words, especially as we navigate transmigration transformation based on the frameworks and steps we have discussed?
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, it's my great honor to have been here to spend the entire day with His Excellency Mr. Minister, distinguished guests, and also the scholars, where we really discussed ideas. And the ideas are all about thinking about the everlasting problem that becomes more and more important. How can we make sure that we have the shared prosperity? How can we make sure that we have the resilient societies? How can we make sure that we have the ever-growing prosperity and shared in a very fair, equitable way? These questions have been more and more important in recent years. Actually, reflecting on Professor Arif's presentation, if we just look at how the world had been before 2007, 2008, maybe we were all thinking about, okay, everything is now ready for the automatic pilot. But we've been going on the uncharted territories for a very long time. But the uncharted territories come with opportunities for some countries. Whenever there is the risk, we should not be scared of taking risks. We should be first measuring the risks, and we should be thinking about what type of outcomes we can get out of these risks. And as I said earlier, the Transmigration Ministry's program came at the right time where there is the demand for such regional development attempts, both from the domestic economic dynamics, things like low value-added inequalities, but at the same time, the global economic activity, which requires more and more connected countries to continue more resilience in the what is to come as globalization 2.0. In this very important period, I really congratulate and hope the best for the efforts of Ministry of Transmigration. At the same time, hoping to be in close touch in terms of collaborations, in terms of exchanging ideas, because this program, as I said, is not only an economic program. It is something that will transform the societies, that will help the societies becoming more resilient, that will help the economic structures becoming more resilient. Thank you so much for your invitation. It was a great honor to be here. Thank you.
And I heard you, on behalf of University of Glasgow, you have a little surprise for our minister, I heard. So therefore, we would like to invite His Excellency, Minister M. Iftitah Sulaiman Surya Nagara. Would you do the honor to come up on stage to receive this wonderful surprise? Also, as a token of appreciation and partnership between University of Glasgow and Ministry of Transmigration of the Republic of Indonesia. Excellent. Can't wait to see the vision comes to life. Professor, you may return to your seat. Another big round of applause for all of us here today. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. As we wrap up today's forum, please take 30 seconds of your time to scan the QR code shown on the screen. Please take a picture of it, and please take a moment to give your feedback, as your feedback is valuable for us. You can take a picture of it first and fill it out after the event, because your input help us make our future events even better. Yes, let's take a picture of that QR code. We're still waiting for your feedback. You can take a picture of it first and then fill it out after the event. Once again, your input helps us make future events even better. The future of transmigration is not only about where people move, it is more about what opportunities can be created, what capabilities are developed, and how communities can become part of stronger and more connected economic ecosystem. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Transmigration of the Republic of Indonesia, our appreciation goes to all participants, and of course, thank you to everyone behind the scenes who has made today's program possible. My name is Puri Anindita. It has been my pleasure to be your host today. Have a wonderful afternoon until we meet again. Terima kasih. Sampai jumpa. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.